Okay, you guys, I am back. We do have a stream up over on YouTube now. I'll give you a link for that shortly. Let me see 1 second.
Timmy, go ahead and send me the link in a PM,
Okay,
and I'll post it in the chat.
okay. Sounds good. Thank you, Andy.
Mm-hmm. Timmy, there's some folks who are asking if you could just redo the example clips and start some of that stuff again, just because they couldn't see it.
Oh yeah, for sure. I can start fresh from the get go on YouTube if you want, if you guys would like.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna go ahead and end the stream on Discord then. Is that okay? All right.
Okay, folks. So here you go. There's that.
I guess I can still be in here.
In do you want to mute here in Discord and then just talk through the live stream, and folks can ask questions in the Spellbreak Academy class chat?
Yes.
You can start the questions from there.
Okay, that should be good. Hopefully you guys can hear everything, and everything should be good on YouTube. If you have any issues or anything, let me know, or Andy will let me know, and I'll be keeping track of the Academy chat. All right. All right, you guys. We are starting back fresh, anew. Make sure you guys can see everything. Make sure you stay in the Discord chat. I appreciate y'all coming through. We're doing a Spellbreak Academy, you guys. So welcome, welcome, welcome. If you're just now coming through, my name is IXI Timmy, IXI. I appreciate you coming through. This is our very first Spellbreak Academy class brought to you by Spellbreak and the guys over at Element. Element is the longest running competitive organization in Spellbreak community. It's ran by the community and honestly has the best players in the game, some of the best casting talent in the game, and just a really, really great place to be for just competitive gaming on Spellbreak, period. So welcome. I can see everybody in the chat. I see you guys. Hopefully everything's looking better and sounding better. I really appreciate you all coming through. In this class, we're going to break down a little bit of what the Pyromancer class has to offer, show you guys exactly what's in its kit and its strengths and its weaknesses, and show you guys how to capitalize on those and be able to win those fights in the Hollow Lands. So the first spell, first thing we're going to talk about is the spells, the sorceries, and exactly what they are and how they work. So the spell for your fire gauntlet or for a Pyromancer is going to be the Fireball. It is a slow-moving, large radius projectile. It's not going to be great at long-distance range, so just be aware of that. It deals between 25 and 38 damage, depending on its rarity. It leaves a splash damage on a small radius, even without your first skill. And it also leaves a fire puddle on the ground that applies Ignite. Now, you can see the fire puddle there. If I lay it there, you can see that the puddle burns your opponent while it's there, and then after the fire puddle disappears, you do have that Ignite that ticks off for 8 damage total, and that's two ticks of 4 damage, so for overall 8 damage. Let me make sure that everything's working over here on chat. So much better. Everybody guys can see stuff. All right, good. Everything's working. Awesome. You guys are the best. Thanks for being understanding. Thanks for moving over to YouTube with us. I really appreciate it. I apologize for the little bit of a hiccup there in the beginning, but things are underway and we're moving, and it feels nice. It feels good. So thank you guys so much to be here. Let me make sure that I want to make sure you guys don't hear the game audio. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure that it doesn't happen. And we're moving on. Okay, so the next thing you need to learn about is your Pyromancer sorcery, the Fire Gauntlet sorcery. This sorcery is called Firewall. In my opinion, one of the best things about the Pyromancer kit. I love using this and punishing my opponents and just using it in the middle of a fight. You can hold in your sorcery cast key to get a better visual indicator. Looks really, really nice. Gives an idea of where you can place it, how's it going to be laid down, and where's it going to go when you finally do cast it. So make sure when you're initially using Pyromancer or the Fire Gauntlet that you can hold it in for a little bit to get a better idea of how it works, where it's placed. But you do want to get sped up on that as quickly as possible, because telegraphing to your opponents where you're going to lay your stuff is definitely not what you want to do. It's not an ideal thing to do. Also, you'll notice that even if I put my cursor all the way out, very far range, that the firewall doesn't actually go that far. It has a maximum range, and it will show you that maximum range while you're holding it in and aiming with it. So being aware of that maximum range, how far it can go, can often allow you to get that firewall down very quickly. And knowing that if I knew my opponent was there at that tree, then I would know that I could just swing up my firewall, lay it down, and it's going to go there. So that's something that you have to be aware of, and it will be very, very helpful for you to be able to know the range that is offered with your firewall. Once you finally do cast it, it will leave a firewall on the ground for 15 seconds. It also has a 15-second cooldown. My cooldown is lessened because I'm running the Spellslinger talent. So it will normally be 15 seconds, and it also deals 6 damage to your opponents and yourself, and it also applies Ignite to your enemies. So make sure you're using that to apply that Ignite. Ignite's extremely important. It's not only a way to deal damage, but also a very important way to get some information on your opponent. Almost like a mini tracking, in my opinion. It's pretty nice. Also prevents them from getting those heals off that would really end up punishing you. So now that you know about the fireballs, you know what the spell is, you know a little bit of information about the basics of the fireball and the firewall sorcery, how could you use those? What are the best ways to use that? So the best way to make use of your fire gauntlet, your fireballs, your main spell, is to make sure that you're within a sweet spot of about 20 meters or so. Inside of that range, you're very, very easy to hit your fireballs. The large splash damage, the radius of your fireballs are pretty easy to land at this point. Even with high mobility, you can really hit some easy shots there. And anything past 20 meters, you want to kind of rely on your secondary gauntlet, which we'll talk about in a little while. But definitely this is the best effective range for that nice fireball damage. Looks nice. Also, make sure that you're paying attention to the terrain that you're on. There's definitely optimal terrains that you want to fight on. Things like the wall or sides of castles or on columns or just on cliff sides is definitely a good place for you to be able to stay, rain down that fireball damage, get that high ground advantage, and really just capitalize on what the Pyromancer does best, and that is huge burst AoE flashy damage in your opponent's face. And we do have a good example of those things for you right quick, so we're going to take a look at this. You see me here, I'm throwing some fireballs out at an opponent that's really outside of my range, really honestly wasting my mana, wasting my time, and just finding it really, really hard to land any of those fireballs at this range with that slow projectile speed. It's just hard to predict. And then you see Kamsky, as we hop over here to Kamsky, he has this opponent here, he sees him down here, and he knows that he's kind of falling, he's going around this way. So he sees his opponent coming around here. He knows that if he gets up to this point here, he'll have a perfect vantage point to where his opponent's going to land over here. And it gives him all the options that he needs to jump around and rain down fire on his opponent, while also keeping himself difficult to hit and also kind of in a safe position. And that's exactly what he does. He jumps around, he continuously uses his rune to reposition, and only comes off of his high ground whenever he knows he's about to secure that kill. Same thing here. Jumps around, uses the structures to stay off the ground while maintaining that high ground advantage to be able to just easily and quickly rain down that damage that you guys are laying down. Okay, you guys can't see my clip. I got you. Sorry about that. Here we go. That should be better. I will replay the clip for you guys right here. All right. I apologize for that. Swapped over to YouTube and things got a little bit different. We're good now. We got you. Here we go. All right. Okay, so now we are back. You guys should be able to see it. Thank you, guys. Thank you. We have... So this is an example of not such optimal terrain and more optimal terrain. Thank you guys in the chat. I'm so sorry about that. We're back. Here we go. So you see me throwing some fireballs at a long range here, having a really difficult time of landing any kind of shots, just not optimal range whatsoever. Even though I'm really trying to stay up above my opponent and get that advantage of being above, it's just not going to be a good distance for me to make that work. We do, however, have a clip of Kamsky really showing you guys what you should be able to expect and what you should be trying to do in the middle of these kind of fights. So he sees this opponent right here. His opponent has hit Firefly, and he's coming around the building here to get this area to maybe try to get some cover, to try to get away from Kamsky. So Kamsky's going to come up, jump up on top of the house, land in this little perch, which is going to give him exactly the vision that he needs to be able to rain down fire, to keep himself safe, and also get that nice high ground advantage that's really going to make this class activate and work really, really well. So here you see, he's on top. He lays down the fireballs. He's doing this big burst damage here. And he only comes off of his high ground advantage at the last second to be able to secure that kill. We see some more fireballs coming down here. And also pretty much the same thing. He only comes off whenever he needs to get that last final shot and be able to secure that kill. Very, very well played by Kamsky. And just really showing you the optimal placement to make use of this gauntlet in this class. Very, very good job. All right, so the next thing that we're going to want to do is, hold on one second. So the next thing you want to know is basically the interactions between your spell and other spells. One thing that's really cool about Spellbreak is the elemental interactions that go on in the game. It gives a lot of depth to the game, both offensively and defensively, that you have to be aware of. So one of the very first things that you're going to want to know is something about Frostborn. Frostborn is one of those classes that can really dampen your ability to do things, and it's because they have frost that can really block your stuff. So and also vice versa, you have things that can block theirs. So if you lay down a fireball and you have a fire puddle, and an opponent from long range is trying to hit you with some frost lances, you can easily lay down that puddle in front of you and stand behind it almost like a firewall to eat up that frost lance. It's not always extremely reliable, but it is a good tool to have in your pocket to be able to know that you have it as a possibility there whenever you need it. So hopefully that will be good. I'll show you guys a little bit of an example of how that works in game. Like I said, it's not always going to be a possibility, but when you know that it's there and that it's something that you can use, it really becomes something that's going to take you above the average Pyromancer. This is really going to up your game big time. So here we see Thunderson doing his thing. He's out in the middle of the field, and unfortunately for him, he has a Frost Lance trained on him, and there is no time to get to any cover. The only cover that he really has is possibly this, but it's not really ideal. It's not huge, and this Ice Lance is already trained, already aimed, and he doesn't have much time to do anything about it. So he's going to try to find a way to counter this incoming damage that could potentially really hurt him. So we see Thunderson doing exactly what you want to be able to do here. He does not have his firewall available at all. It's on cooldown. He doesn't have any available. The cooldown on his rune is also bad. So he doesn't have anything available to him at all, except the huge brain, the gigantic brain of laying down this fire puddle, and it plays out beautifully for him. He sits there, the frost lance comes out, and it gets soaked up by the fire puddle. He takes 0 damage here. Beautiful play. Not always something that you're going to be able to rely on consistently always, but like I said earlier, it's just something that being aware of, that you know that it's there, can really turn the tables on your opponent and take them by surprise when they don't expect it. The next thing that we're going to talk about is one of probably the favorite community interactions in the game. You guys probably already know about this. If you don't, then it's something special. We call it the Dragon Fire Cloud. Basically, blowing up a cloud against Toxicologist creates an explosion. Ignites the cloud and creates green flames that does giant burst damage. We call it Dragon Fire. And you can ignite that with any kind of firewall, any fire. So if you have fire puddle down, or if you already have your firewall down, it will ignite. I'll go ahead and show you guys that. So it will ignite any fire that's already there. Whenever the cloud touches it, it will go ahead and burst and explode. So that's something important to know. One thing that you probably should realize about igniting the toxic cloud is the more optimal way is to definitely use your firewall, because it's an instant cast, so you don't have to wait for your fireball projectile to reach it. So a lot of times you'll be able to instantly punish those Vanishing Mist Toxicologist users if you're using your firewall over the toxic cloud. And one thing to note, you can use the firewall to ignite your toxic cloud instantly. But if you lay the firewall down right before the cloud hits, you'll actually get a little bit more damage and be able to apply that ignite. So I'll show you guys exactly what I'm talking about. So I'm going to jump up. I'm going to lay down this cloud here. And I'm also going to lay down my flames right before it hits. So you'll see that after that DF went off, I got an initial 8 damage with 2 ticks of ignite. So that's really, really important. I think a lot of Pyromancers might already know how good it is to be able to use your firewall to ignite that toxic, but not every Pyromancer might realize that laying down your wall right before the cloud hits is a huge, huge way to kind of get a little bit more advantage and a little bit more information by applying that ignite. So try to do that as often as you possibly can. One other thing that you need to be very, very aware of when it comes to interactions is definitely the Frostborn's Alacrity Trail or Ice Trail. When you see the Ice Trail going down, you should not expect or rely on your fireballs to be able to splash. When you throw down the fireball damage, even on the water here, you'll notice that it kind of just dampens that splash damage. There's no, if you see I throw a fireball here to the side, I get that splash damage on this opponent here. But then if I shoot my Alacrity Trail and shoot the same fireball right next to my opponent, no damage is applied. So whenever you see the Alacrity Trail out, if you're pursuing a Frostborn that's laying that down, rely on something like Lightning to be able to try to maybe grab some CC off of that trail and punish them if they're not running Harmony. But just be aware that will dampen your fireball quite a bit. It also does the same thing with your firewall. So if you see a Alacrity Trail down and you want to throw down that firewall to try to maybe get some damage, it will not apply on the spot where your trail is. So you have to be very, very aware that it's there. Try to make sure you use other options when you see those ice trails down. And also, one of the things that you're probably already well aware of is that flash freeze ring. Be aware that that is a ring, meaning that you can shoot from above or from below inside of the ring, but you can't shoot on the outside. It won't go in, and you can't shoot from the outside, from the inside out. However, if you are inside of the ring already, you can shoot and get some damage off. So just be aware that the flash freeze is a ring. Okay, there's no top or bottom to it. So make sure that you're aware of that, and just get use of seeing exactly how that flash freeze interacts with your fireballs, and make sure that you're aware of that and take care of it. The next thing that you're going to want to make sure that you are very, very aware of, that you might not necessarily, I mean, some of you guys might really have already had a taste of this and seen how devastating it can be for a Pyromancer. But when you run up against a Tempest or a Windy Boy, that we might call them, and they rain down their tornado, which they're going to do a lot because they get that nice vertical boost with updraft, you're going to notice that the first initial fireball that you throw at them will completely be eaten up by that tornado. And any other fireball after that will be adjusted and pulled by that pull of the tornado. So anytime that you're aware, anytime that you're around a Tempest, you're fighting people that has that wing gauntlet on hand, and you see that tornado coming out, you need to be aware that it's there, that it's going to cause your aim to be a little bit funky. It's going to pull your fireballs toward the center of that tornado, and it's going to make your aim a little bit more or less reliable. So just be aware that it's there. Be aware that it's going to devastate your aim unless that you have some way to compensate for it. And it's just going to be really, really hard to hit. So if anybody has any questions, please let me know about the suggested use of our spells and sorceries, or about the interactions, the element interactions between any of the gauntlets or the elements. So if you guys have any questions whatsoever, please make sure that you are in the Spellbreak Discord. We have a section here for the Spellbreak Academy. You guys can make sure that you're in there getting those questions off, and I'll try my best to answer them. Lighting the tornado on fire does damage to a Tempest player using it to jump, right? I don't think so, but let's see. So we'll lay down a tornado here. Shoot it with our fireball, and then let's zap it. Yeah, it looks like the fire tornado does not conduct lightning. So looks like no. Only if the Tempest is inside of it. Okay, we have our Master Tempest right here. hanging out in the chat. You guys, this is one of the best things about this academy. I'm not the only instructor. I'm not the only master of my element available for you guys. We do have other people in the chat, so I got to give a big shout out to Tacos, which you guys will be hanging out later on in the Spellbreak Academy. He is our Tempest master, and he says only if the Tempest is inside. If you light it out after the updraft, it won't ignite them. So if they're inside of their tornado, trying to get their updraft, yes, the lightning will do some damage. If not, then it won't. Can you show a DF NATO and how it removes the tornado quickly? Yes, I can. So if you guys don't know what a DF NATO is, it's basically whenever you combine wind, toxic, and flames. I think it has the highest burst damage available in the game and can really, really devastate your opponent if you can use it reliably. So what you're going to want to do is throw your tornado down or have their tornado down. If it's green, you can then throw your fireball and ignite it. I waited a little bit too long. You can tell that the toxic NATO doesn't last as long. So we'll go ahead and try that one more time for you guys. But it's a very good point, and I'm glad that you pointed it out, Slim, because it is a very quick thing that you need to do. All right. So we're going to throw it down. And there we go. You see an instant explosion as soon as that toxic cloud or that toxic tornado gets ignited. It disappears and it travels up. So it's a really, really good way to kind of punish those Tempest users if you can make it happen. It's not always super, super reliable, but if you can make it reliable, it's an interesting thing to be able to use. Have you noticed a consistent height of firewall where you can fire an ice shot through it? I don't know if there's a measurement for the height of the firewall. I'm sure we could probably get that for you eventually. But make sure that you are just. I think that being able to realize the height of your firewall is just something that comes with more experience and more play. The more that you use it, the more that you'll be able to know where to expect it. If you're talking about like at what height of the firewall can the frost lance go through, we can test that out as well. However, I do have ambidextrous, so it might not be great. But like that will come with practice. The more you experience, the more you'll be able to kind of learn. So that should be good for you guys. Top of flame seems to not block the ice shots. Maybe a bug though. I mean, the very, very top of the ice shots will not be. The very, very top of the flames. Sometimes you can slip one in there. But yeah, I can't show that to you guys right now because I have ambidextrous and we have alacrity. So the very, very, very tippity top of the flame, sometimes you can get a frost lance to slide through there. But the visual indicator is pretty accurate to what the actual hitbox is. Okay. All right, that looks pretty good. I think that we've answered all the questions in the chat. If anybody else has any questions, please feel free to ask in the chat as we move on, and I'll do my best to get to those. You can also find me on Twitch and ask me questions there anytime as well. Okay, so let's see. The next thing that you're going to want to know is how to use your sorcery. What kind of utility does that sorcery really, really offer? Me too, one question. You guys, if you have some questions, go ahead and put it on, and I'll do my best to answer them. Put them in the chat here in the Discord, and I'll do my best to answer them as we go through here. So we have sorcery. How can you use it? What's the best way to use it? And how is it effective to use that firewall? So we have a question coming in from Covey2772. Is it possible to use the stored gauntlet talent to make a quick DF NATO? No. So great question. Is it possible to use the stored gauntlet talent to make a quick DF NATO? Let's see. So stored gauntlet talent. What exactly are you talking about? Ambidextrous? You're talking about Spellslinger. So whenever you have a gauntlet in your hotbar, Okay, I read it. Okay, Covey, yes, you can. I'm sorry, I don't know why that was so difficult for me to understand. Yes, you can. So if you have if you're running Spellslinger, you can, just like I did a second ago, you can run that Tempest as your, or that Wind Gauntlet as your offhand. You can have that Tornado Sorcery up and ready to use whenever you need it. You can lay that Tornado down and quickly swap over to your Toxic Gauntlet, just like this, and really just make that DF happen very, very quickly. I've actually seen a lot of more experienced players able to use that and more reliably use it and really punish their opponent. So, yes, that definitely can. I'm sorry it took me a second to understand the question. Really great question, and I appreciate it. Does your optimal secondary gauntlet choice differ depending on what console you are playing on? I don't think so. I think currently, I feel like that Proletariat has done a really, really great job of making sure that you have a similar aiming experience across all the platforms. So I don't think that it really would matter for you much. And we'll talk about the optimal choices for your secondary in a bit. And you can decide if that gauntlet is better for you on your console, if it's personally better for you, or if maybe you would like a better. And you can ask me if that gauntlet that you prefer is a viable option. So. So the DF NATO definitely shoots up a little bit higher than the regular NATO, so it's very, very important. The more that you use that, the more that you'll see that it's a very, very strong thing that you can use if you can use it reliably. It's not always easy to make happen, so don't get Spellslinger and go into the game and expect to be able to DF NATO everybody right off the bat, because it's not going to be easy to do, but it is possible. So, yes. Okay, so we're talking about the firewall, the sorcery. The best thing about the sorcery firewall is that it's instant. It's free damage. You can really drop it down very quickly and get it off on people. And there's no really way for them to get away if you don't telegraph it. If you don't hold that aim forever, then it's going to be a very quick, instant drop down of damage that's going to be really devastating to your opponent. If you, like I said earlier, it's a much faster way to blow up a cloud, a toxic cloud, than it would be if you were using a fireball. You have to wait for the fireball. Obviously, the projectile travel time is going to take a while for you to get there. So being able to use that firewall is a much better way to ignite that toxic cloud very, very quickly and take your opponent by surprise. Another thing that you should be aware of, just like the fire puddle, a good thing is that it will block any ice lance. So if you're behind your firewall and you're trying to get some heals off and you're getting shot at by a frost gauntlet, then it will block that frost lance. Very, very important to know, and very, very great way to get some cover when you might not necessarily have it. Wind displaces the wall, so if you put down your firewall and you have somebody like Tacos coming at you and they're shooting some wind, it will get rid of your firewall. So you have to be aware of that. And it also it will connect and do damage through your firewall. So if you're playing against a Tempest user, don't feel safe behind that firewall. It's not like some of the other projectiles that will kind of just get soaked up by the firewall. It is something that will definitely take away your cover a little bit. So make sure you're aware of that. Good thing about Toxic is that it will actually the firewall will actually absorb your Toxic slap. Do be aware that it does change your firewall into green flames that does 20 damage per tick. It's going to be very significant damage if you step into it. So just be aware that that's going to happen, but it will block your any Toxic slaps coming in for you. It is a faster Dragonfire with the Toxic offhand. Like I said, if you have Toxic, you can throw out that cloud. You want to do it right before the cloud hits, and you want to try to lay that firewall on your opponent to be able to flag the ignite. That's the optimal way to do it. It also pre-ignites your cloud. So this is one of the things that I've shown people quite a bit in my channel, and I really love it. I call it the impact cloud. You can call it whatever you want, but if you lay down your firewall and you throw your cloud through it, it'll actually ignite the cloud before it lands, and whenever the cloud lands, you get that big DF. And it can be used for close range. It can be used for long range. However, the long range is kind of slow moving and easy to dodge. So you probably want to kind of use that as close as you can to make it effective. But yeah, man, that's one of the coolest things about the interaction of Toxicologist Cloud and Firewall for me is that pre-ignite of the cloud. It's very, very nice. Be aware of the flash ring. It negates your firewall inside of it. So like I said earlier, if you're fighting against a frostborn or somebody that has a frost gauntlet, and they use that flash freeze, you are not going to be able to lay your flame wall down onto them. So you like, even if it looks like your flame wall might work, you'll notice that whenever we lay the flame wall down here, it just does not go into the center of that flash freeze ring. So no matter what, if that flash ring is going off on your opponent while you're laying your firewall down, it will not connect. So don't try to use it. Try to cancel that firewall before you cast it, or save it until after that flash freeze is done. Definitely something that you need to be aware. Also, like I said earlier, the ice trail will negate your firewall as well, so don't expect that to land on anybody that's racing down their trail to get away from you or pushing up on you. You can also use that sorcery. This is one of my favorite ways, and I think this is one of the biggest brain ways to use the sorcery, in my opinion, is to be able to hit people behind the wall that you might not have a vision on. I don't know if I can make this happen or not. I didn't aim it well enough there. But being able to lay it down on opponents that you don't necessarily have line of sight on is a huge thing that the firewall can do, and this right here is a really good example of it. You see Thunderson coming in here using that secondary gauntlet, really making use of that lightning to push in, and now using that shadow step to push up and be even more aggressive on his opponent here. But his opponent has taken a little bit too much damage, and his opponent is a little bit scared. So you see that Thunderson did a really great job of positioning himself right up here on the high ground, just like you would want to do, to make sure that he has this advantage to rain down that fireball, that splash damage. And now he has pushed his opponent into a place behind this tree that he's not going to be able to get to with this lightning. However, he does have this fire gauntlet on hand, and he knows that he has some splash damage. He also has that nice firewall ready to go that he can lay down and kind of put some pressure on his opponent. So he's going to do just that, and hopefully lay a firewall down probably about right here. Let me see. Right about here behind the tree, and push his opponent forward into him so he can stay close. He can stay into that sweet spot range, and he can use this fireball to clean up this kill. So let's see how this works out for Thunderson. Definitely playing it well so far, and let's see what happens here. Lays down the firewall, does some nice damage. It does exactly what he wants to do. Pushes his opponent forward here and causes him to get right into the face of Thunderson, exactly what Thunderson wants, because that allows him to hit those easy fireballs and cleans up that nice little kill there, using that firewall to hit that opponent that was not in his line of sight. Very important to know. Same thing here. His opponent hides behind a tree, tries to get some of that healing off, tries to get maybe some peeking with his frost or his lightning, but he gets completely punished as that firewall comes down and lays behind the tree and pushes him out of his safe zone and out of his sanctuary. Very nice job. Very nice job, Thunderson. Good job. The other thing that you need to really be aware of, and I don't think that people that your beginning firewall users or your beginning pyromancer users really be aware of, is, yes, it can block projectiles and stuff. No, it doesn't block every projectile, but it also blocks vision very well. You can see through it, but there's still a distortion, and at a certain range it becomes even harder to see. So being able to use this firewall to lay down some vision cover, block the vision of your opponent, is also extremely important. And I would say that it's even more so important in situations like this, where you're at that final circle. You're making it to the end, and you have no places. Your places to hide and heal up are extremely limited here. So you need to try to find ways to give yourself some cover to be able to, get healed back up, get back into the game here. And it looks like this is exactly what's happening. As he sees his opponents over here fighting over here, he lays down this firewall to give himself the cover, to get up some heals, to keep himself out of sight, out of mind, and hopefully let these players get each other's attention while he heals up and resets and comes back in to take advantage of that. Looks really nice. Make sure you guys are doing that as often as you possibly can. Here we go. Comes in really well here. Sincade able to use it several times in this match as the circle closes in ever closer, and there's just no options to hide and heal and reset. You have to make your own options, and that's one of the things that this class does very well. You see him place it very close to the circle, this time, and it's just going to give them, I don't think anybody's going to be looking over there expecting somebody to be between the storm and this firewall. So just a really good way. Make sure that you're aware that it blocks vision. It gives you a little bit of a blind to hide behind, and even if it's not blocking the projectiles, it's still a viable way to get some cover to hide up. Excuse me, sorry. And the next thing we're going to talk about is the skill set. In every class in Spellbreak, there are 4 skills that really kind of just help synergize and kind of extend the playstyle of the gauntlet of that class. So for the fire gauntlet, you notice that I've been saying stay aggressive, use whatever you can to close the gap and get up and be aggressive with them. The skills that are offered in this class pretty much offer an extension of that playstyle. But before we hop into those, I do want to ask you guys, do you have any questions whatsoever about Firewall, about the sorcery, how it can be used, how it can't be used? Any questions at all, please make sure you drop them down in the Spellbreak Academy class chat in our Discord, and I'll do my best to answer those questions right now. We are talking about the sorcery Firewall, this thing right here. If you guys have any questions, please let me know. All right, we'll take a look at chat. Could you show the green firewall again, please? Yes, I can. All right, there's the green firewall. And that basically, whenever you throw some toxic slaps into your firewall, it will change your flames green, and that signifies that it does more damage over time. What do you do against a stone masher as a fire user? So the cool thing, and we'll talk about that matchup a little bit more, but I will touch on it here a little bit. The thing about the Pyromancer is it does offer a ton of options against the Stone Shaper. I call the Stone Shaper the floor is lava class because you do not want to be touching the ground. And when we get over to our optimal choices for runes, you'll see that there's a lot of options when it comes to your rune, a lot of short cooldown mobility runes that are available, and also this Firefly ability that you're going to be having on your skills is also going to be one of those those tools in your toolkit to be able to help you get the advantage against the Stone Shaper. I'll talk a little bit more about that and give you examples of how you can counter those in just a minute. Should you use a firewall offensively for damage or defensively for damage? Both. You should both. You should read the situation that you're in, figure out what the best choice of that firewall is, and just be aware that it's something that you don't want to waste. So if you're using it for something like a toxic cloud, or if you're laying it down on something that a frostborn that might potentially use that flash freeze, you got to be aware that it's there, and hopefully keep yourself from wasting it, because firewall is not only an ability that you can lay down defensively and offensively. In just a second, you'll see that with a skill, the firewall turns into a utility weapon as well. So I'll show you a little bit more about that, but just make sure that you can use it either way. Just don't waste it. That's the biggest point. Don't waste it. Excuse me. When does a firewall turn blue? The firewall will turn blue whenever you get your third skill, which we'll talk about in just a second. I'll explain exactly why it turns blue and all of that good stuff. Can you firefly through a green firewall? Does it damage you? You cannot firefly through a green firewall, and it does damage you. Yes. Let's see. All right, we have some questions being answered in the chat. Is blocking enemy fireballs with your own ever a strat, or just kind of happens? Not sure if there's ever been a have no cover, so I just got to time this moment. There's definitely times where you can predict that they're going to shoot their fireball and counter it with one of your fireballs. I don't think that it happens very, very often. And honestly, for me personally, just the fact that I'm trying to hit precise fireballs, a lot of the times me hitting a precise fireball will cause my fireball to counter theirs if they get one off in time. So for me personally, I don't use it as a strat to like counter fireballs consistently, reliably. But I do know it's there, and I know that I can use it when I need to. So if there's a situation that presents itself that seems like that's the right choice, then yes, you can. But I don't think it's something that needs to be like always on your mind. I don't find myself using it all the time. What is the best secondary gauntlet to use in your opinion? We'll get to the secondary gauntlets in just a second. What they are, how they can be used, and what the situational viability of them are. Here, what systems are playing on? Fun question here. What system are you playing? Are you playing on? I'm playing on PC. But Spellbreak is free to play and available on PC, Xbox, PS4, and the Nintendo Switch. And it has cross-platform and cross-progression, guys. So not only can you play on whatever console you want to play on, you can play with your friends on whatever console they are. And if you progress on one, you can go overhead and log on another, and you keep your skins, you keep your progression. Definitely setting a standard for what in my opinion, setting a standard for the gaming industry. So definitely, if you don't have it on all those consoles, go get it on all the consoles. Do it. Let's see. Does it fully damage you or only the poison damage? It's a fully damage. You take as soon as you step into that toxic flames, that fire, that green flames, you're going to take at least 20 damage. At least. Do you often try to engage with Firefly or save your firewall for damage mid-fight mobility? I like to engage for Firefly with Firefly if I can, depending on a situation, obviously. And then while I'm fighting, I try to keep the fight around the Firefly or the firewall if I can, because of the ability to reuse your firewall for that Firefly ability. Very, very important. Don't waste it. I mean, sometimes I like to use it engage. I would say more often than not, I use Firefly to engage. But it's also something that you can use in mid-fight for get a little bit of damage and information on your opponent. What's the best way to use your Firefly skill? We'll talk about that in just a second. Does Firewall block ads? I don't know. Lightning go through Firewall? Yes, lightning goes through Firewall. It is still a little bit difficult for them to see you. However, they can hit it through, hit you with lightning through it, and when they do hit you one time, they do get a better idea of where you are. So it will not keep you safe from those pesky zappy boys. But it is a good way to keep yourself at least a little bit visually evasive, I guess. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is talk about the skills. One of the most unique things and one of the most fun things about Spellbreak versus other battle royales that you might play is that you actually get to progress throughout the match. When you drop down to the Hollowlands, you're going to start with that level 1 skill called Combust. It's on direct hit, ignites target for 2 seconds, as you guys have seen. And Fireball Explosion is upped by 200%. So it's going to make those fireballs way, way easier to hit. In practice mode here, you'll see that I just pick up these orbs to level up. In the actual game, you'll progress by making your way into the safe zone, which will be designated by a yellow circle. And once you get into that yellow circle, you will get your next skill. So Combust is going to give you a little bit of that big splash damage there. You get a little bit closer, and it will apply that ignite that you see. Even though I'm not hitting this opponent exactly directly, I am still getting that big radius on my fireballs and applying that ignite. So, I'm sorry. I am hitting the opponent directly, but it's making my fireballs bigger and applying that ignite. My bad. All right, so the next skill that you're going to unlock is that Firefly. You've already heard it talked about in the questions. Personally, this is one of my favorite abilities in the toolkit for the Pyromancer. I love this. It really allows for that high mobility playstyle and in-your-face flashy action. So Firefly will make you immune to your flame walls, and on entering your firewall, your flame wall, you will get a fly for 2 seconds. So that is your Firefly. Your next ability will be the Pyrolysis. That is the ability that we were talking about earlier from one of the questions. That it will make your flames into blue flames. It will increase your flame wall damage by 100%, and will last for 2 seconds. So it will not last during the whole duration of your flames, but during the initial 2 seconds of your flame wall, you will have 100% damage. So double the damage. And last but certainly not least is the Conflagration skill. I love this ability. On fireball hit, it spawns 4 small fireballs. Very, very good to just kind of, like I said earlier, it extends that big burst AoE damage that you kind of expect from that Pyromancer class. It just makes that whole idea of up in their face, on top of them, raining down damage, just more viable, and just kind of extends that whole playstyle a little bit more. And now we're going to talk a little bit about how each skill can be used properly. But before that, do we have any questions? Any questions about our skills here? You can let me know if you guys are hanging out with me in YouTube. Hey, thanks so much for being here. I appreciate y'all being here. We are currently running the first class ever for the Spellbreak Academy, presented to you guys by Element and Spellbreak, and we are all hanging over in the Spellbreak Academy Discord, or the official Spellbreak Discord, in the Spellbreak Academy chat. So if anybody's in YouTube, you guys come over and join us on the Discord. It's a really good time, and it's the best way for me to get to your questions. So if any of my moderators in the YouTube chat wants to post a link for the Spellbreak Discord, I would appreciate it. Also, Andy has a link for you guys in the Discord chat. Alrighty. In heavy fire match where there is fire everywhere, how do you avoid running through your own fire? Is there a strategy for handling that? Honestly, the strategy for handling that, in my personal opinion, is just game experience. You definitely want to... I always use the example of whenever you first come into Spellbreak, especially now with the addition of Clash, there's often a sense of overwhelming chaoticness and chaos, I should say. And after you play for a while, there's this one point that just in the game that it just all clicks. It reminds me of, if you guys have seen the old school X-Men movie with Quicksilver in it, there's a point where like everything is just going crazy. There's chaos everywhere, but he can just run, and he's running so fast. He sees everything in slow motion. He understands the chaos. And for me, I think that every player in Spellbreak, after they play for a little while, they have that moment where you're surrounded by flames. There's lightning strikes everywhere. There's toxic clouds everywhere. But somehow you see everything that's going on. You understand where your place is within that chaos, and you understand how to manipulate it and move through it. So in my personal opinion, I think game experience will help you with that. Obviously, using things like your rune or your skill to stay up and above the action is a really good way to do it. You do have to be aware of things like the lightning sorcery that has like pretty much a column of damage, but being able to use your mobility to kind of stay away from that damage is a good way to do it. But like I said, in my opinion, it comes with game experience a lot of the times. If you're looking for verticality from a rune, I would advise Spring Step over Featherfall. Yes, agreed 100%. Dork-like, good suggestion. For the combustion, how much damage does one of the four do to the opponent? We'll see if we can get one of our four to hit this opponent. Oh, well, gotta shoot the fireball, huh? So I'm not sure if that was actually the split conflag fireball, or if it was that toxic flames there. So we'll do it again. That looked like it was 18. Yeah, so that looked like it was 14 or 15. It might have some kind of scaling. I'm not sure if we have any kind of official damage numbers for the conflagration balls. I know we've got Thunderson in the chat. He says 10 damage each, and yes, they have a small splash range. Okay, so that's very, very interesting to know, you guys. So each one of those those fireballs that come from conflagration will actually spawn, will do splash damage and do 10 damage per small fireball. That's actually huge, and shows you exactly why you need to be taking advantage of that close range and using these terrain and these structures to get that splash damage. Very, very nice. Can you show how hitting targets too close with pyro can hurt you? Yes, you guys. So if you do get too close to an opponent, that splash damage will actually splash back and do some damage to you yourself. I'm sure if you've played Pyromancer already, you've been in these situations and already see it. Early on in the game, it's something you really, really need to be aware of. Also late in the game, you need to be aware of it, but it's not as big of a factor because you're not really that close that often, but you do need to have it on the back of your mind. Make sure that you're aware that it could happen, and it could really put you at a disadvantage when you don't intend to. So shout out to Slim Roth for being able to come through and helping me out with that. Okay, so and Zen also pointed out the 16 and 17 that we're seeing here is the initial splash damage from combust. So that's not the fireballs that we're seeing. That's just the initial combust. Thank you, Zen. Thank you, Zen. Yeah. A lot of pyromancers will get right up in your face and be very aggressive and not pay attention to that self damage. I think that it comes with time and experience. That's really you're gonna learn. And maybe my statement about it's not as big of an issue later on is just my personal experience, because I'm seeing our master Tempest say that he's seen several pyromancers exile themselves from self damage. So maybe be a little bit more aware of it than what I said. But yeah, it's there. Know that it's there, and don't hurt yourself. Come on, y'all, don't hurt yourself. All right. So we're going to talk about the suggested use of each of these skills. Combust, the splash damage applies to yourself at close range, so you got to be careful, like we just said. This is a very, very good point, you guys. So you definitely want to try to hit those precise hits if you can, to be able to get that ignite. And one of the ways that you can do that is to be able to kind of lower your aim a little bit. Let me go ahead and turn my crosshair back on. I do apologize. All right. So you'll notice that if I shoot my fireball here at this opponent next to their head, the fireball is going to go right past them, right? So if I aim down slightly, the same positioning horizontally, just lower vertically, and I shoot again, let me a little bit lower. If I shoot lower, it'll actually deal damage to the opponent. Even though I'm still the same distance horizontally from them, aiming a slightly lower toward the ground will give you that combust and give you that big splash damage. So even when you're aiming for a precise hits and getting those ignites off on your opponent, aiming slightly lower can often give you that combust to give you a little bit of advantage and really capitalize on that splash damage that Pyromancer really is known for. It also hits around corners. So take similar approach to your firewall. If you don't have your firewall sorcery available, you have an opponent hiding behind a tree here, you can shoot next to the tree. That combust will tag them. It will force them to either stop healing or reposition. So be aware of that. If you see somebody, peeking around a corner, maybe they're right here on this part of the wall, I could throw this out and that combust will tag them. So you don't necessarily have to be aiming at the ground. I'm not exactly saying aim at the ground, but I am saying make sure that you aim at surfaces that can make use of that splash damage, because however it might hurt your pride, that splash damage is really what makes the Pyromancer a little bit more strong than what you would see it be otherwise. So use that splash damage, aim toward surfaces, aim slightly lower toward the ground to be able to take advantage of that combust, and it will really, really help you get the advantage in that fight. Ignite, also one of the best things. I kind of already talked about it a little bit. Ignite, the reason why you always want to be aiming for direct hits, always, even with the splash damage, you want to be trying to get that direct hit for Ignite, is because Ignite, it does 8 damage, right? You might think, okay, 8 damage is not that significant, I don't really care. But it's not just about the damage. It's about the prevention of recovery. It's about the information that you're gaining on your opponent. What direction are they going? They can't use Shadow Step. They can't go invisible until that Ignite heals. Until that Ignite ends. So there's a lot of times when you're aiming to get that precise hit, you get that Ignite. It's not just about the damage. It's about information. It's about prevention, and it's very, very important. So don't just use Splash. Aim always for the precise shot. Make sure you can do that. The next one is going to be our Firefly skill. Like I said, one of my very, very favorites. I love getting up in people's faces with this. I love repositioning. I love engaging, and it's just really, really great. So to use this, you're going to want to lay down your firewall. You want to jump through it, and you're going to get this nice little 2-second flight that's going to be able to give you all the momentum and mobility and that vertical mobility to be able to close the gap on opponents that might be in positions that's unfavorable for your matchup. So make sure you use the Firefly to either create distance and use your Offhand gauntlet, or use it to close the distance and get up in the face of your opponent to get that nice aggressive fireball right up, boom, right up in their face. You can also use it to reposition the high ground as often as possible. Definitely something that you're going to want to do in some of these matchups. And we're going to show you a little bit of an example of how it can be used here in game. So make sure you're relying on this a lot. I would say that I think that the combust is probably the cornerstone of what makes Pyromancer strong. However, for me, I think that like the Firefly is like my bread and butter. I really use it so often. So we're going to start off here. You see that the opponent has, well, actually you haven't seen it yet. So we see that this guy here has flown away from me. He has flight, and I do not have flight. I only have spring step. I have a nice legendary spring step, but it's not going to be able to carry me the distance that flight can, right? Also, you'll notice right here, right off the bat, right when the video starts, that I use my feather, my Firefly, right? So I'm using my Firefly. I know that my flight won't last as long as his lasts, right? So I've got to find a way to extend my Firefly and close this gap even more effectively. So one of the very important things about Spellbreak and to understand about Spellbreak is how momentum and movement is kind of chained together in this game. Once you get really good at the game, you can actually feel this feeling of momentum, and it just feels really nice. And this is exactly what happens here. We use the Firefly, we have the spring step on hand, and before my Firefly ends, I use that spring step to kind of chain that forward momentum and upward momentum that I got from Firefly and from my spring step to close the gap. And not only did it close the gap effectively, but it also put me in a position overhead that I'm going to be able to rain down some fireballs, use that combust, use that splash damage, and he most likely does not even know that I'm here. He probably did not even think that I could close the gap. So make sure you chain that movement together as often as possible. That's really going to start putting you above all your competition. All right, the next thing that we have here is, I really love this clip. So here we got a guy that I've already done quite a bit of damage to. He is really wanting to get away. We see him up here on the high ground. I'm trying to get back up to the high ground so I can get up into his face and kind of put that aggression on him that we need to put on him. And he wants to get down, so he's going to use a shadow step and go this way. So let's go ahead and show that. He uses shadow step. So at this point, I'm up above. I'm where I want to be. That's fine. I can rain down fireballs here, no problem. I think that he's probably either here, and he's going to go this way, or this way. And if he was smart, he could either wait here or go back this way and maybe throw me off, but he does not do that. So I want to maybe lay a firewall down here to prevent him from going this way and bring him out of invisibility if I can. And if he goes this way, then I should be able to use that firewall to continue my movement, continue my forward momentum and my aggression, and to really be able to stay up on him and stay right on top of him and be aggressive. So we'll see what happens. I lay my firewall down there. He actually comes out of invisibility because he doesn't want to go through the firewall, does eventually go through it. I see that he goes that way. Instantly use my firefly here to just continue my movement, keep the aggression on, and just punish him. Go ahead and take him out of the game. Here's another really important thing that you guys need to be very aware of is that firewall is reusable. So if I lay down, for instance, in this one, I lay down a firewall to deal some damage to an opponent that is here. He wants to get away. He uses flight. I think that he's going to be going up on top of this tower. So I see that I have this flame wall here, and that's pretty much, in my mind, that's a station for mobility. I can drop by this station anytime I want, and it gives me a 2-second flight, and I can use it to go wherever I want and do whatever I need. So having that in mind, I knew that it was there. I knew that it was available for me. So, I tapped into it. I saw him go up. I tapped my flame firefly, and I used it to close the gap and go ahead and put the distance on me and him much shorter and allow me to be able to use that aggressive fire right up in their face. Here is a very good example of how to use it to get the high ground. We have ice lance up here. He's trying to shoot down at me. I want to use my firefly to go up and around and close that gap and get up on his level as soon as possible. And that's exactly what we do here. Um, so we're going to go up, jump on up. We use that spring step once again to chain the movement of my firefly. And here we have one of a really, really, really great example of why it's so important to know that's pretty much a mobility station that you can use over and over. Because when you're in a small circle like this, when you have stone shapers all around, you're going to want to be able to find a way to stay off the ground when there's no other options. And that firefly can really be that option. We see Kamsky here down to the nitty gritty. 4 people remaining in the HoloLens, circle pushing in, no structures that can be used whatsoever, as we see shockwave after shockwave come out, and Kamsky just expertly using and making use of that firefly ability to keep himself off the ground, keep himself up in the air and looking down to get that nice scout information to see where they're at, and also make sure that he can hit those fireballs just a little bit easier. So make sure you guys are using the firefly. Firefly is your friend. Very, very important. Use it. Reusable. Very, very good. Okay. So the next skill that we're going to talk about, we're not really going to talk about that much, is pyrolysis. Pyrolysis, however you want to pronounce it, pyrolysis, that's how I say it. So if you look here, we're not going to really talk about it much. Pyrolysis creates your firewall, turns into blue flames for 2 seconds, and it does twice as much damage. That's pretty much it. This kind of incentivizes you to lay your flame wall directly onto your opponent to try to get some damage early on. So try to do that. But yeah, that's how pyrolysis works. If you see those blue flames, you got double the damage. Okay. So last but not least is definitely the conflagration. Not really much to talk about this other than the fact that it extends the AoE splash like we talked about earlier. One thing that you do need to note is that the fireballs that come from conflagration can block your fireballs. So for instance, if you see here, you see the small fireballs coming out. If I shoot one of those conflag balls, it will block my fireball. So if you're in close range and you're shooting a lot of fireballs at somebody and there's conflagration fireballs just dropping around everywhere, be aware that you can actually nerf yourself a little bit by blocking your own fireball with those smaller fireballs. So be aware that they're there. Other than that, make sure you're using structures and terrain to take advantage of that conflagration to get those little fireballs bursting and bouncing everywhere. So if anybody has any questions on skills, please let me know. Another thing to note about conflagration is it's like combust. It will make it even easier to punish opponents that are hiding behind trees or around corners. So make sure you're using that same play style to capitalize on conflagration too. How does Dragonfire work with pyrolysis? As far as I know, there's no special interaction with pyrolysis and Dragonfire. The Dragonfire just gets instantly exploded by the pyrolysis flame wall, just like it would with a regular flame wall. Obviously, like I told you guys earlier, you want to lay your flame wall down before the toxic cloud hits to get that ignite. So obviously, if you lay down the flame wall before the cloud hits and you have that blue pyrolysis fire, you're going to be able to do a little bit more damage with the DF. So that's what you want to do. But other than that, I don't think there's any special interactions. Excuse me. Let's see. Also, yeah, that's a good point to note as well. Laying your firewall down directly at your feet can also activate it. So you don't necessarily have to lay it in front of you and walk into it. However, as somebody that has played Spellbreak and Pyromancer for a very long time, laying it directly at your feet can sometimes cause it not to activate properly. So laying it just a slightly ahead of you is, in my opinion, a little bit more of a safer way to do it. But yes, you can lay it at your feet. For sure. Does conflagration still happen on ice puddles, or does the fireball despawn before the impact during some small fireballs? Well, let's take a look. I'm going to ice showdown. We take a shot, and it looks like we still get the conflagration fireballs, and that's a very, very good point. Very good question coming out from Crazy Guitar Man. Yeah, you can actually it does generate those conflag fireballs. So that's a really, really good thing to note. And let's see, even beside of it. So if you shoot beside of the alacrity trail, it might not do the burst of combust, but you do have that conflag that may deal some damage. Who knows? Very, very good question. When you turn turn a blue flame to green, will it double the damage plus DF? When you turn a blue flame to green flames, it just turns it to green flames. So it doesn't double the damage or anything. It does, as far as I know, it just does the 20 damage noxious flame tick if you're standing in it. So. What happens when you use a dash rune into a firewall? We do have that tech, and I was going to show it at a little bit later. But for what Slim is talking about in the chat, we call it I call it the Phoenix Dash. Other people call it the Jet Dash. But we will show it off a little bit later. But you can use runes and your Firefly in conjunction to make them even stronger. And I'll show you guys exactly how to do that in just a little bit. The fireball does despawn on the alacrity trail, but we do get the conflagration. So let's see. Do we have any questions? Any other questions? All right. Looks like the questions are drying up a little bit. I think we're free to move on to the next section for you guys. All right. Okay, let's go ahead and pop this up. Excuse me. So now we're going to get into the meat of it. You guys know what the spell is. You know what the sorcery is. You know how you can appropriately capitalize on those things. You know how you should be playing your Pyromancer class in general. But how should you be playing against specific classes? So we're going to tell you guys how you should be able to win against specific matchups and what you should be able to do to try to get that dub. So the first one we're going to be going over is Pyro versus Pyro. The number one thing that you need to be aware of versus a Pyro is that you have to be consistently repositioning to different terrain and different structures, whether it be using your rune, your dash rune, your spring step rune, whatever you have, whether it be using your Firefly to get up to a different place. Make sure that you're constantly utilizing those tools to be able to put yourself in a different position to be able to keep your high ground and stay out of their combust range. They also have a lot of AoE, so they want to get above you. They want to reposition as well. So you need to be consistently staying evasive while also tracking your opponent. And we're going to show you a very, very awesome example of this exact play style here. Let me see. All right. So we have our boy Campsy coming back in, showing you guys how to play this Pyromancer class, going against a Drasticon here, I think. You'll see right away he puts down his firewall. He uses that Firefly a little bit to reposition, uses that Spring Step once again to push up on here and try to make sure that his opponent doesn't heal. Unfortunately, it does take a little bit of fireball damage for it, but here we go. This is really, really the optimal play. He sees that he has the high ground on his opponent. He sees that he has the high ground on Drasticon, so he's going to stay on that high ground. He uses his Spring Step very quickly to get back over to the house here and just make sure that he uses these structures to not only stay on the high ground advantage, but also stay safe and keep himself out of that vulnerable position using these structures to get a little bit of cover here. Very, very good play. And you got to make sure, I do want to make the distinction. When I say high ground advantage, I do mean on a structure or some type of terrain that you can actually stand on. Using your Spring Step to get above your opponent is not the same thing as getting the high ground advantage. It is a good thing to do, and it really is going to put you in a very, very great position. But that's not the same thing as high ground. So I just want to make that sure. I want to make it clear, make that distinction now, that when I say high ground advantage, I'm talking about getting to a place where you can stand that's solid, that's stable here. And that's exactly what Campsy's going. He's going back and forth, really, really doing a great job of showing you what you do against these Pyro players. You see there, he did put himself in a little bit of a bad position, but that Spring Step coming off of Drasticon was really good there. So you can't dodge every single shot, but using these tips and tricks, you should be able to dodge most of them. So if anybody has any questions specifically about the Pyro versus Pyro matchup, please let me know, and I will do my best to answer those for you. Excuse me. So sorry, guys. I think I'm a little bit under the weather. I apologize for how I sound. and the coughing from time to time. Hopefully, it's not too disruptive. Did he just jump in midair off of a sorcery hold? You can do that. Yes, you can. So sorcery hold, I don't know if it's something that we're going to be going over in this specific guide, but yeah, sorcery canceling is definitely a way that you can kind of extend that movement in air when you might not expect it. If anybody has any questions whatsoever, specifically about how to verse Pyromancer, Pyro versus Pyro, let me know in the chat. I'm looking for it right now. I'm going to give you guys a couple of minutes to kind of file in. And I do want to say, once again, thank you guys so much for being here. I appreciate y'all checking out the Spellbreak Academy. Hopefully you learn a little bit from this whole class, and hopefully you enjoy it. And if you have any questions whatsoever, you could always feel free to come into the Element Discord, come into the Spellbreak official Discord, or you can find me on Twitch live, or even on Twitter, and we're all here to help. This community is incredible. We're all here to support each other, and I appreciate you guys being here and enjoying what we're doing here. All right. Okay. It looks like we don't really have any questions. We're going to go ahead and move on to the next matchup. Okay. So this matchup is a very interesting one, in my opinion. I actually like this matchup quite a bit. I think Toxicologist is at a slight disadvantage in this matchup if you're a good Pyromancer. And it's slightly because of the interaction between Toxic Cloud and your Flame Wall and your Fireballs. So when you're against a Toxicologist, obviously you want to try your best to time your Firewall or your Fireball with their Vanishing Mist. When you see their Toxic Cloud come out, you want to make sure that you explode it as soon as possible. So make sure you're looking for that cloud. You're watching for any potential Vanishing Mist or outbreaks that could be coming your way, and you punish that cloud as soon as you see it by blowing it up with your Fireball or Firewall. Even if you're not able to ignite it as soon as you see it, make sure that you ignite it eventually. Don't let it linger. Just like with the Firewall, the being able to go back in and out of my Firewall to get my Firefly, a Toxicologist can also go in and out of their Toxic Cloud to get Vanishing Mist, to go invisible, to get that little bit of a dash. So make sure you do not allow them to have that station of mobility to go back into and really just come at you with some big burst damage and some crazy stealthy mobility. It's definitely something you do not want to let linger. Blow up the clouds. Another thing that you should know about is you need to make sure that you make use of this small 20-meter range. You want to stay within your sweet spot as much as you can. However, being very close to a Toxicologist can be extremely detrimental to your health. Not only because of the self-damage from Combust, but they have that Toxic Shotgun, that Toxic Slap that will just really, really punish you in a heartbeat and just demolish you and erase your existence before you even know what's happening. So make sure you stay in that sweet spot, but don't get too close. Don't get too comfortable, because they're going to hurt you. Make sure that you try to preemptively block their outbreak attempts. So whenever you see them going into their cloud, you can instantly dash away to try to make sure you get away. Because when you see a Vanishing Mist go down against a Toxicologist, you should assume that they're right in your face. When they use their cloud, they more than likely are coming straight for you, and you need to either use the dash to get away to stop them from slapping you with that outbreak, or you can lay down that firewall, that flame wall that will actually block the damage, or you can use the Firefly to reposition in a different position and take them off guard. So make sure you're prepared and you're expecting. Always be expecting the outbreak, because it will punish you worse than a shockwave. Sometimes it's crazy. So make sure you have that rune cooldown available if you have. Make sure that you use that firewall, that Firefly, if you can. And also, last but not least, if they have used their sorcery, if they have used their rune, be aggressive. Push in. Take advantage of it and put them on the ropes and keep them guessing. Make them come up with a strategy. So we're going to go ahead and give you guys a good example of this. Here you see me kind of trying to loot. I see some toxic clouds coming out, some viscosity being laid down from this toxicologist. He also starts to lay. I try to use my frost gauntlet here because I'm not in the sweet point range. I'm not within that 20-meter range, so my fireballs are not going to be as effective. And he's also got the high ground, so I instantly bring up my frost gauntlet. Want to try to make use of that secondary gauntlet to cover up my weak points on the Pyromancer, but he is hiding, not giving me any points to be able to tag him with, so I got to close the gap. I lay down my flame wall instantly and just go up on top of the mountain, close the distance, and get right up in his face. Hit a very nice fireball as he's sitting there trying his best to land a frost shot. We see the toxic cloud come out, and I instantly blow it up with my fireball. I used my fireball that time because I didn't have my cooldown on my firewall, and I was close enough that it didn't have that much of a travel time. But even then, it still wasn't quick enough to be able to deal damage. He got that vanishing mist off, so now I know he's invisible. However, I did see kind of when he went into the cloud initially, I seen that he was kind of facing this direction here. So I knew that he was most likely going to be going this way. So after I pop up that cloud, you see me kind of waiting and watching for him here because I didn't expect him to be coming at my face. So I try my frost gauntlet again. He uses that flash freeze to make sure he can keep himself safe. And now I'm not in a great position. I've got the low ground, but thankfully for me, he wanted the fight bad enough that he jumps off the high ground. He still has it a little bit, but kind of, isn't able to do much with it. And then we see here, as soon as I see that, I kind of notice that he's winding up. It kind of looks like he's preparing something, He looks like he's about to do something. And that makes me think, okay, here comes the outbreak. I got to get ready for it. This time, I have my flame wall available. And so as soon as I see that, boom, I lay my flame wall down, instant activation, 32 big damage with that DF, and now we have him on the ropes. We are definitely have the advantage in this fight, using the terrain a little bit to block any incoming frost lance, staying as close as I can while using my spring step to get close and be aggressive and putting the damage on him. And right here, I just want to show you guys this flash freeze that comes out, from this opponent. He looks like he puts it down, and it does a great job of protecting himself from my fireball. So I switched to my ice to try to do some damage. Unable to do so, but I noticed that after my ice is gone, that I can use my spring step pretty effectively here. So I use my spring step to go up, and I shoot down right here into the center of the flash freeze. Now, in this particular clip, the flash freeze actually dissipates before you get to see the interaction. But even if that flash freeze was still going on, since I shot down to the center of the ring, it actually would have damaged him. So I would have got that 26 shot, got a nice little bit of combust there, and then went overhead. And that's another thing that I didn't really talk about here. The aggressiveness of my fireballs and stuff kind of really did the job. But when you're a pyromancer and you're constantly laying down fires, and there's fire puddles here and there, and you have flame walls here and there, just play around that when you're playing a toxicologist, because obviously if you're too close, you're going to get hit with a DF yourself. But a lot of times they'll rely on their cloud and expect a vanishing mist and not really pay attention to the fact that there's some fire puddles around that's going to ignite and punish them. So just be aware of the fire that's around. If there's fire there, then you will explode their cloud. Will this stream be easily available after we're done here? Got a dip for a little bit. Notice it's unlisted on YouTube. Yes, it will be available for you guys. Spellbreak will probably let you guys know exactly where it's going to be, whether it's on their channel, mine, or in Discord. It should be available for you guys. So if you're not able to stay for the entire class, I understand. It should be available. So be careful too. Toxic clouds being thrown at your face. Do not panic and fireball. You will DF yourself. Very good point, Slim. Very good point. What do you think about layering your clouds within their clouds? Rhinoc, I've never really noticed that happen often or reliably. I think that you probably would get both DF damages off on your opponent. Maybe somebody in chat can give us a better idea of that interaction. But in my opinion, I'm pretty sure you would get the double DF if you layered your clouds. And it might be a very, very, very viable strategy. Definitely worth trying. Let me know how it goes for you. And if anybody else has any insights on that in the chat, that would be awesome. Sweet. Thank you for the tips, Timmy. Later, everyone. No problem, Crazy Guitar Man. And thank you so much for those questions. Very good questions, you guys. It also puts shield ticks on them so you can track. Well, there you go. There you go. If you layer your clouds, you can get that double burst of DF. And if you're able to use that to ignite, it will also. Two D-fires on top of each other don't stack the damage unless they are one after the other. Okay. So there is our clarification coming in from my fellow instructor, Thunderson. It does not stack unless they are staggered on their timing. So it has to be one after the other. Okay, so where do you get the ambidextrous talents? The ambidextrous talent is now available for you guys as a spirit talent. You can find that in the game before you get into a match, and I can show you exactly where to find that, but whenever I'm talking about our talents. Okay, moving on. The next one that we have is our matchup versus the Frostborn. I know if you guys are a lot of Pyromancers hanging out, then you're probably really looking forward to the explanation on how to take on a Frostborn user. And let me tell you exactly what we have in mind for that. So we have that you really need to be aware. Obviously, you need to remember that they have their ice trails available to them. They also have the flash freeze, so be aware that whenever they're on their ice trail, you're not going to be able to get that combust. You're not going to be able to get that splash damage as easily. You can use the conflag, but it's not as reliable as something like combust. So just be aware of that. Also, flash freeze, obviously you cannot shoot through the flash freeze or shoot out of the flash freeze, but it is a ring, so you can shoot down into it. So if you're above, you can shoot down like that. And I'll show you on this dummy so you can see that the damage is. You can shoot down into it like that or up into it. Usually there's not a lot of situations where you get the upward chance unless you're on the side of a hill or something. But just be aware that the flash ring is a ring. So the flash freeze is a ring, so just be aware of that. And take advantage of that during your fight. So even though the flash freeze is going on still, you can still get some damage off if you know exactly where it's effective at. The other very, very important thing is that you guys should know. So I showed you guys that the firewall blocks a ice lance. However, if you are fighting against a Frostborn user, they have alacrity on their gauntlet. So if I lay down a firewall to protect myself from the frost shot and they shoot me, their alacrity trail actually gets to my flame wall before their frost lance gets to me. So that alacrity trail will actually put out your firewall before the ice lance gets there and will allow the ice lance to get to you and do damage. So make sure that you pay attention to when you're shooting and when you're playing against a user using an ice gauntlet. Try to see if they're a Frostborn user, because if they're a Frostborn, you just got to be aware that they're going to be able to shoot through that firewall. So you're not going to be able to use that cover as effectively. So make sure you're very aware of that. Keep a rune on cooldown whenever you get close. Obviously, as a Pyromancer, you want to get up in their face, get in that sweet spot, get up in that aggressive mindset. And a lot of times whenever you get really up close, they're going to pop up that flash freeze and really try to put you in your place and keep you held in position so they can punish you with that frost lance. So make sure that if you're using runic fluency, you try to save at least one cooldown for that kind of interaction. If you're not using runic fluency, make sure you only use your rune when you absolutely need to, and try to save a charge for whenever you get inside of that flash freeze. If you're able to bait that flash freeze out and it doesn't hurt you, it doesn't kill you, then you can be really, really aggressive, push on in, and they're not going to be able to do much to you other than run away on their alacrity trail. So that's really when you want to push the gas down and so go ahead and start pushing in really, really hard. One of the last things that you'll see a Frostborn do a lot is hover in the air. That's one of their strongest abilities, to be able to get a nice sniper's perch when they might not have one otherwise. So when they're in the air hovering, make sure you punish them for it. They don't have any cover. There's nowhere they can go. So if they want to stay there and aim at you in the air for a while, they're going to potentially be punished for it. So shoot some fireballs. Make sure that you punish them for hanging there in the fire in the wall air for too long. And we're going to show you guys exactly what that looks like. And here we go. We have me running around, I did hear some frost shots from across the way, so I knew there was a frost user in, and I know that he's a frostborn user right away from the alacrity trail that we saw from him using trying to go to get this loot. Right here, I closed the gap really quick, and I used this cover here to make sure that I'm safe from any potential ice lances. I see that he goes up and hovers for too long, and honestly, at this range, it might not always be the best idea to try to punish them at this range, even if they're hovering. But I did feel safe with this cover here, so I knew that I could pop up, throw a fireball, and then hop back down and hopefully not get punished for it. So we hop up, we throw a fireball, and he misses a shot, throws him a little bit off of his game as he takes damage, and he misses that shot. We see him trying to put some distance between me and him, wants to get away, wants to put me at arm's length so he can make use of that gauntlet here. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I don't allow that. I'm going to lay a firewall down here so that if he goes this way, it's going to kind of cut him off and do even more damage. And also, I should be able to jump into that wall and use Firefly if I need to pursue even farther. So definitely want to lay that down there and try to cut him off and give myself an option in case I need to chase even more. Lays the firewall down, does cut him off. It's very surprised that he stops to shoot at me at this range. Did not expect that whatsoever. So like this shot coming here, I kind of had to quick and make use of some structures to hide behind. Didn't do a great job. He was able to tag me in my shoulder, but lesson learned. Featherfall coming out, and we see him hanging up in the air again. I come out from behind the tree to try to punish him for hovering, but he actually pushes in on me there. I don't expect it at all. So at this point, I'm not expecting him to come close. I'm expecting him to hang in the air. I expected a good fireball, but he pushes in and he makes a good use of the flash freeze. And as you can see right here, I don't have my cooldown up. Luckily for me, it was very close to being up. And so whenever the flash freeze came out, I had an option to get out of it, and so I did. And you'll notice there that I tried to shoot a fireball that didn't go through because it was slightly outside of the ring of the flash freeze. And now I'm kind of just pushing in, not shooting my fireballs here, trying to make use of my lightning to electrify that lightning, that frost trail. And now I'm within that sweet spot range. I've dwindled him down to almost no health, and I've gotten into that sweet spot range where I can be aggressive. And he's kind of like he's got to turn and fight, or he's just going to get shot in the back. So I push up on in, hit an easy fireball to his face as he's standing still. He goes up with a feather fall to try to shoot me with his ice lance. I punish him once again as he hovers there, and just take him out of the game. And that's pretty much what you want to do. Stay aggressive as possible, but be very, very aware and cautious of any potential frosty stuff that could really dampen your playstyle. So if anybody has any questions, let me know about the matchup between Pyro versus Frostborn. It's one of the more difficult matchups, in my opinion, for Pyromancer. So if you guys have any questions at all, please let me know. And we do have a clip in the chat if you guys want to check it out, showing off Firefly plus Dash. I will also show you guys Firefly plus Dash in just a moment before we end the class. So I'm looking over again. I don't see any chats about the versus Frostborn. I don't see any questions in the chat. I'm sorry. So we're going to go ahead and move on. If I see any from chat, then I will try my best to dip back in and talk about Frostborn for a second, answer those questions. But as I don't see any now, and we're already running a little bit slow, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next thing. Harmony is great to pressure Frostborns. Agreed. Harmony, when you're a Frostborn, Harmony is one of those things that you kind of want to run. Okay, so the next thing is going to be our Pyro versus Stone Shaper. Basically, this class is the class that I call the floor is lava class. You do not ever want to be touching the ground. As soon as you touch the ground, you're going to be punished devastatingly by a shockwave that comes from a long range and does a lot of damage. So you have to figure out ways to make sure that you stay off the ground. Just like with most of the things that I've been teaching you, use your rune. Use your Firefly, whatever you can to get the high ground. Get to a structure that those shockwaves cannot be effective on. Make sure you just get to a place that is more difficult for that's going to cause that that Stone Shaper to exhaust his rune or exhaust whatever else he might have to be able to close that gap, and you can punish him during that. So make sure you're using your Firefly and your Rune to get wherever you need to be, and be aggressive and as close as possible while staying on top of the Stone Shaper. They're not going to be able to do a lot to you, and you're going to have a little bit of an advantage at that range. So make sure you stay on top of them, be aggressive, and change your terrain and use structures to stay out of that action, out of that scary shockwave. So we're going to show you guys a little bit of a matchup here with the Stone Shaper. We have Thunderson already from the get-go in a great place on top of this building, already in a position where this Stone Shaper is going to have a very difficult time, and you can see that he's having a very difficult time. A nice little Frost Lance coming out very early here is able to punish him, and it looks like he's down into like close enough range that Thunderson kind of wants to get down, close that gap, and make use of those fireballs to go ahead and kill him. We see him try to throw a boulder up to land, but Thunderson easily jumps up and sidesteps that. Thunderson notices that he does trade position, and it's not ideal. Definitely lost that high ground. So Thunderson's going to try to go ahead and try to drink up a little bit and reposition. But luckily, his opponent is a Stone Shaper. His Stone Shaper does not want to stay on the high ground that much because he can't really do much damage in the shockwave from up there. So we see a great job. Oh, I skipped a little bit. We see a really, really great job of Thunderson of realizing that his opponent is on the ground. He does slip up a little bit here because he does not expect his opponent to be there, I think, and tries to get a Frost Lance shot off, but luckily he dodges, he sidesteps that shockwave at the last second. And here we see that he notices there's a safe spot. There's a space right here that is really going to protect him from shockwaves. They're not going to be able to travel up there at all. So he wants to get over there as quickly as he can and stay off the ground while doing so. He has one charge on his Rune, and he does have that that Firefly available for him if he needs it. So we'll see what he's going to be able to do here. Firewall coming down, try to lay a little bit of damage on his opponent, and he uses that last charge of his dash in conjunction with a nice little sorcery cancel to travel all the way over, carry that momentum to get up to this high ground and keep himself out of harm's way and just finish that player off with a nice little Frost Lance to the face. Right back into it, we see it right off the bat. Thunderson is in positions and in places that's not easy for those shockwaves to learn. At this point, he's in a place that maybe it could have traveled up, but I'm pretty sure that he knows that he's been there a few times and that it does not travel up in that area. But you got to be wary of areas that look similar to that. But that's something that will come with experience. At this point, he's got this player on the run. He wants to stay aggressive. He wants to push in and stay on top of it. So he's going to make sure that he pushes in, but also stays on top of that castle structure to be able to stay aggressive, but without putting himself in a vulnerable position. And very last but not least, he throws down a nice lightning sorcery to deal a little bit more damage. And seeing that his opponent is pretty much dead, he's going to stay on the ground and finish that guy off. Very, very well played by Thunderson, and just shows you really what you should try to do to be able to try to get away from those shockwaves and look for those structures that shockwaves don't travel up. That's pretty much it. Close distance on them quickly. Do we have any? If anybody has any questions here about Stone Shapers, you guys make sure you ask them in the Discord chat, and I'll do my best to answer them for you. When do I engage in a fight, and when do I hold back and reconvene? You basically need to, if you're low, obviously if you're low within 1 or 2 shot range, even if you're a really great player, you can really be taken out of the game and into the next lobby very quickly. So I would say if you don't have full armor, or if you have no armor, you probably want to stop back and heal up if you can at all. But honestly, in my personal opinion, I think it comes with experience. You can trust yourself and know what you can handle and what you can't handle. So just figure out situations that you can live through and try to use those as rules of when you should retreat and when you shouldn't retreat. In my opinion, I think that Pyromancer is often rewarded for being aggressive, even when they're pretty low. That's where talents like Scavenging comes in that will help you heal back up after that exile. So it kind of like plays to the aggressiveness. But yeah, you got to kind of figure out for yourself what you think that you can handle and what you can't handle. Any tips on baiting the flash freeze? Bait the flash freeze. Yeah, basically get up in their face. As soon as you get up in their face, or if you push up and be aggressive in their face early on as a frostborn, their number one tool, their number one answer for that is flash freeze. So just get up in their face as quickly as possible, and make sure you use that rune to get back out of the flash freeze, and that will bait that cooldown a little bit and be able to do your thing. Can you cancel a rock throw with a fireball? You cannot cancel a rock throw with a fireball. In fact, if you shoot a fireball, a boulder, it will ignite the boulder and turn it into a meteor that will do extra damage, and I think damage over time whenever it lands. So let's see if I can hit that. I didn't hit it. I'm the worst. But yeah, maybe I can throw it through my flame wall and it might ignite it. But you can't. You cannot block a boulder with your fireball. If you stay off the ground, Stone Shapers really only have their boulder to throw. Exactly, or their offhand. They really have to rely on their boulder sorcery or their offhand. So if anybody has any questions about Stone Shaper or Frost, let me know, and I'll do my best to answer those for you. But moving on, we're moving on. And actually, before we move on to our next class, I'm going to go ahead and give you guys a short 5-minute break. If anybody needs to get up, get a snack, get some drinks, go to the restroom, whatever you need to do. We've been here for almost 2 hours. So if you guys need to go to the restroom, go do it right now. I'm going to give you guys 5 minutes. We'll reconvene back here at 1:50, 52 at the latest. But yeah, everybody get up, get yourself a snack, go whatever you need to do, take a short break, and we'll be right back. Thanks, you guys. All right, guys, we should all be filing back in. I'm going to give it about another 60 seconds so everybody can come in. I don't want anybody to miss out on the Pyromancer day one of the Spellbreak Academy Pyromancer class. I really appreciate everybody being here. I really appreciate the interaction in the chat and the questions. It's very, very helpful. And hopefully you guys are learning a little bit more about one of my favorite classes. Like I said, it's so fun to watch, so fun to play, and just really, really one of the most flashy, aggressive, awesome classes in the game. I just love it. I love it so much. And make sure you guys are representing that Pyro Nation with all the beautiful cosmetics that are available right now. I just picked up this flaming gravestone, and I just cannot tell you how happy I am with it. Also, you got to rock the outfits that just really they speak to your pyro soul. So you guys make sure if you can to go ahead and pick up some of that stuff. It not only helps out the game, but it represents the Fire Nation. You got to. All right. You guys, hopefully everybody is slowly filing back in. We're gonna give you about 20 more seconds or so. I do apologize for the brief break. Next time I give you guys a break, it'll be around 10 minutes. So I do apologize for that. But hopefully you guys were able to, get yourself recuperated, recovered, and relieved, and ready to get back into this action. Okay. We see some people in the chat. They want to see Pyro versus Tempest. Okay, we'll do the Tempest, but we got Conduit first. Okay, we got Conduit first. So for the Pyro versus Conduit is one of those classes that has been exceedingly more and more popular. Now that the gauntlet is much more reliable, it's very difficult to deal with if you don't know how to, especially at that mid to long range, where Pyro's kind of like are a little bit slacking in. So you got to be kind of clever when it comes to showing you exactly how to beat a Conduit. The number one thing that you need to remember as versus a Conduit is be aggressive. Don't waste your time. Don't waste your time trying to hit mid-range fireballs. It's just not going to be worth it. And most of the time, you're just going to be putting yourself in a position where you're just going to be eating some zaps. And that's not what you're looking for. That's not what you want to do. Be aggressive. Be up in their face. Their lightning gauntlet is not as effective at that range. And it's really going to force them to figure something else out, some way to counter that kind of aggressiveness. And they cannot just place their sorcery on top of you because it will damage them as well. So be aggressive as much as you can. Make sure that you keep your rune on cooldown, much like Flash Freeze. If you get hit by their Lightning Strike sorcery, it is one of the most devastating and punishing sorceries to be hit in the entire game. It hits you with some CC if you're not running Harmony, and at the end of the game, if you get hit with the full sorcery, I think it's like almost 80 damage, a lot of damage coming out from that Lightning sorcery. So it's imperative, extremely important. Try to make sure you have a rune charge ready and available to get out of that lightning strike, because if they hit you, it could be lights out, and it's not a good thing. Another thing that you need to do is make sure that you're using corner peaks. So if the lightning user is zapping me here and he's used up his whole entire bar of mana, now he's waiting for his mana to recharge, I can pop out. I can shoot him. Maybe he's not used his entire bar of mana, but maybe he stopped his lightning attack. Maybe he's pushing up on me. So now I can peek again, because that wind down time of animation from stopping the lightning strikes to starting the lightning strike is just enough of a window for you to be able to get some nice peeks off. And you can hide behind in covers and they can't do anything about it. So make sure you use your terrain. Make sure you're peeking around corners, whatever you can to be able to get that damage that they can't get. And be aggressive, be up in their face. And let's get a little bit of an example of how to do just that. All right. Here we go. All right. So here we see I'm hopping around looking for some nice loot. Don't see anything up here, and I start getting zapped by some zappy boy from across the way. I throw a fireball, kind of just flick the fireball. I wasn't really expecting much, but I did aim toward the bottom of his feet, knowing that he was on the ground there. A lot of the times when you see a Conduit user just zapping at you, you can kind of almost expect them to stand still or close to stand still, in my opinion anyways. So you can really kind of punish them for that a little bit. And here I just flick a quick fireball and it's able to connect. I push on through because I want to get aggressive. I want to get up in his face. I really expect him to stay on his tower right here and maybe hide behind this wall here. But he does not do that. He actually comes down and loses his high ground instead. So that was very, very interesting to me. So I'm expecting him to stay up there. So now I'm just like, okay, we'll chase you down here. I'm going to try to stay above you. Try to hit him with the lightnings, or try to hit him with my my flame wall. Was unable to do so, but was able to put enough pressure on him that he wants to get away or just put some distance in to make advantage of that lightning gauntlet. Use my flame wall there to activate Firefly and close the gap. He also uses his flight again to get some more distance. I use that structure there to try to block as much lightning strikes as I can, and this time I'm very lucky that I have, well, actually not lucky, I was smart enough to keep my runic fluency, my rune charge up, so I could use my spring step to get right out of that lightning sorcery that really would have punished me there. Now I'm pushing back in. Took a second to heal up, make sure I'm at least healthy enough to get in here and get this fight, because this lightning gauntlet will do a lot of damage to you. I push in, be really aggressive here, and honestly, at this range, this is a great place for me to be. This is really great aggressiveness. However, I thought at this point, I really thought that this lightning strike was like here. So I thought that I was like outside of the range of its lightning ability to CC me. However, I was not, and as you can see, I definitely got punished for it. So make sure that maybe you could practice with the lightning sorcery in your practice mode and see exactly where it's going to activate, because being punished by that is really a game changer and can really flip the fight against you really quick. Use my spring step to reset and get back up above my opponent. Lay down this firewall here to try to prevent him from trying to go backwards at all. I want this fight to continue to move this way because that's the way I'm moving, and I can kind of really use my spring step or use this firewall here to follow this movement here. So if I lay this firewall down, he's most likely not going to go backwards. So I'm kind of like just like corralling him toward where I want him to be. Not the best position for me here as far as like distance. But I am able to use my secondary gauntlet and punish him for being in the air and flying away there. Using these trees once again to block any potential lightning strikes causes him to stop. And now I decide, you know what? He's low enough. I'm close enough. I'm going to be a little bit crazy. I'm going to go right in. Use my spring step to get up into his face and swap off that high ground and ray down a nice little fireball onto his face and get that nice exile. So make sure that you're being aggressive. Make sure you're using structures as often as possible to punish that conduit. Whenever you can, whenever they're using their lightning strikes, and that's pretty much the optimal way to get up on that conduit player and really punish him for what he's doing. All right, you guys, if anybody has any questions, let me know. We are doing conduit versus pyro right now. If you have any questions about that matchup, how you can easier beat a conduit, if there's any issues that you've been having over and over when you fight a conduit player that I have not addressed, please let me know, and I'll try my best to address those situations and give you an answer to that problem. So how do you get out of their line of sight but also be able to attack them when they're good aim? It's so hard to be aggressive without taking so much damage. So Toshi, that's definitely a good question, and that's where the terrain comes in. You definitely, if you are around a rock or a tree or a structure, which most of the time you will have something you can get behind to just get some cover while you bait out those lightning strikes before you can close the gap. And whenever they run out of mana or they stop attacking for a second, that's when you start to push. If you do not have anything to get behind, then at that point, in my opinion, you need to rely on being aggressive while also focusing mainly on being evasive. Make yourself hard to hit. It's not always going to work, but when there's no other answers, focusing on being evasive while closing the gap is pretty much the only thing that you can do. Using things like Firefly, using things like the rune charge to try to close the distance in between you and an opponent is definitely going to be a good way to get up on them. But other than that, use the terrain, use the structures, and try to bait out their attacks as much as possible. What is your strategy for a conduit Featherfall user? For a Featherfall conduit, any Featherfall user, you want to be able to rely on your secondary gauntlet. Good pyromancers can hit people in the air. It's not always reliable. It's not always the smart thing to do. Even if you can hit them in the air, that long fireball projectile speed really can, it's not a good look. So make sure you're using that frost to aim up at the Featherfall user if they're up in the sky, or if that conduit user if they're up in the sky, or if you have lightning on hand, use lightning to zap back. That's one of the reasons why having Toxic as your secondary is kind of not the optimal choice, because you don't really have that answer for that situation. So make sure that you have something to cover that part of the battlefield. If I move vertical, anything, since they're also good at tracking. Yeah, if you go vertical, if you're going up into the air, honestly, a lot of classes, and you'll see throughout this academy, a lot of classes are going to have something to deal with people that are going up into the air. That's the reason you see things like Flight and Featherfall. That was almost the meta early on. really, really die off, because a lot of the good players have learned that having frost or lightning on the offhand is going to give you the option to deal with anybody that's using that vertical mobility and not using the structures in the landscape to get some cover. So you really have to be aware that lightning and frost is going to be able to punish people that's hanging in the air. That's just the nature of the game. So you got to make sure you have an answer back at it. All right, and now we're on to our next matchup, you guys. Final matchup. It is versus the Tempest. Shout out to Tacos, the master Tempest, hanging out. And we'll be teaching you guys some stuff about this class later on in the academy. But this is one of the more difficult matchups, especially if you're not running a nice offhand that can kind of cover the battlefield that you can't cover with your fireballs. So first thing off, you want to make sure that you are using your offhand as often as possible. Like I said, they're going to be up in the air. They're going to be easy to hit. They're not going to have any way to hide from you. So use that frost, use that lightning, and punish them for being up in the air, because that's where they want to stay. So punish them for it. To hit any kind of fireballs on them, if you're going to try to hit fireballs, make sure that you're in that 20-meter range at least. And make sure that if you're shooting at them while they're going in the air, try to wait for that apex of their jump. Try to make sure you wait for right at that moment, that little window of potential vulnerability where they're switching their direction from up to down. And that's the place where you want to try to hit those fireballs. So don't use your fireballs unless you're close and you're waiting for that window of opportunity. Try to rely on your lightning or your frost to hit them when they're up in the air. And outside of that, never ever rely on the Tempest to touch the ground. A good Tempest will never have to touch the ground. So waiting for them to touch the ground to get that easy combust damage is not the play. That's not going to help you. And most of the time, it's going to end up getting you punished very hard as you stay too close. The other thing that you need to be very, very aware of, which we already talked about a little bit, is obviously the tornado, the Tempest tornado. Like I told you guys earlier, not only will it soak up your first fireball that is shot, it will displace your fireball projectile as it moves. So there you go. And then if you shoot more, you'll notice that it pulls my fireballs in around that tornado, and it causes them to go in a path that I can't. It's very difficult to predict. And I'll show you guys it one more time here. The tornado's out. As you can see, my fireball's going. They're getting curved. They're not going straight at all. And even good players, experienced players, it's not easy to do. It's not easy to reliably curve those fireballs and rely on that damage. So be aware of the tornado and play around it when you're in that fight. And we'll show you guys an example of exactly how to do just those things. All right. Here we go. I'm walking around, having a good time, enjoying the scenery of the HoloLens, and I hear some action going on to my left, and I hear the squalls. I can see that it is a Tempest user. So at this range, I know that I am not very effective with my fireballs whatsoever, so I'm going to rely on my lightning gauntlet as much as I can. And also knowing that it's a Tempest user, I want to rely on my lightning, period, because it's just an easier thing to do. Also, right here's a little bit of a tip for you guys against Chronomancer users. At this point, I'm doing a lot of damage. He's retreating. He doesn't want to fight much. And I hear him use his Chronomancer right at this area. So I just stop what I'm doing. I don't chase anymore. And I just wait for him to come back. And I place my lightning sorcery and time it very, very well. Definitely one thing that you can do against those pesky Chrono users that you might find from time to time. Staying aggressive, staying pushing that W key, pushing in as far as I can. Trying to take advantage of him at that peak of his jump. Trying to hit those fireballs. Unable to do so. So I switch back to my lightning to get that reliable damage. And I go ahead and push on in here with my spring step to get above my opponent. And it looks like I'm close enough to where I can kind of rely on my fireballs a little bit better, especially at this angle. I know that even though he's in the air, I'm also above, so that allows me to get a little bit of an easier shot. He did touch the ground there too as well, so I'm able to punish him a little bit for that. And Chrono comes out yet again, so I kind of just wait for the Chrono charge to end. I know he's coming back here, so I just go ahead and push upon it right where he's going to be, jump right into his face when he comes back, and then hit 2 easy fireballs right up to his face. I did eat a little bit of damage for being too close with Combust, but in the end, I was able to secure that kill and got a little bit aggressive there toward the end to be able to secure that kill. So just make sure that you're aware of the tornado, you use your rune, and you use your offhand to be able to punish them for when they're in the air, and don't be trying to hit fireballs whenever it's just not a good possibility. Anybody else that has questions about our Tempest versus Pyromancer matchup and how you guys can better win that fight, please let me know. We are answering questions for you guys here in the official Spellbreak Discord over in the Spellbreak Academy chat. If you guys are hanging out with me on YouTube, hey, how you doing? Thanks for being here. Make sure you join up in the Spellbreak Discord, and you can get some questions asked, and I'll do my best to answer it and point you guys in the right direction. All right. I'm not seeing a lot of questions. I do see a little bit of typing going on, so I'm going to give you guys another minute or so before I move on to the next thing. But I do think that we're good on the Tempest versus Pyro questions. All right. So I've already had some questions in the... so basically, Fire Talk's really bad matchup to a good Tempest. Yes. Unless you think that you can reliably... If you think that you can reliably hit your fireballs in air and you think that you can reliably make the DF NATO happen, maybe. But I don't think it's the optimal choice. I definitely don't think it's the best choice. So, also, I do want to mention before we move on, in my opinion, one of the best incredible things about Spellbreak and the developers of Spellbreak Proletariat is that they've made a game that allows us to play any way that we want to. So while I'm giving you guys what we think are the optimal choices, the suggested ways to do things, you guys can play the game the way that you want, become the battle mage that you want to be, and just feel like you can really represent yourself in this game and make it work. So just feel free to know that to explore those options and push the meta and push the game into areas that we may have never even know existed. So definitely play what you like and use these as a guideline. All right, so we're going to be moving on to our next little section, and this is the preferred offhand gauntlet. I've already kind of talked about it a little bit, but in this game, we have elemental synergies, which you guys are probably well aware of. Toxic and flame blows up, ice cancels out fire, and you might think, oh, why on earth would I use frost or lightning as my offhand as a pyromancer? There's no elemental synergy. Yes, there's really not elemental synergies. However, there is something that I like to call combat synergy. Combat synergy is basically when a gauntlet can cover the area of the battlefield or do things in the battlefield that the other gauntlet cannot. So, for instance, we know that there's a sweet range of 20 meters or less with our fire gauntlet here. We know that it's great at that up close, aggressive, above head play style right up in their face. But we don't have a good answer for those long range fights unless we close the gap. That's why we have to make use of runes and Firefly to be able to close the gap. But if you have a lightning gauntlet or if you have a frost gauntlet, you now have a gauntlet that can cover that mid to long range area of the battlefield and really give you something in your pocket to be able to pull out in those situations that Pyromancer doesn't have all the answers for. So being able to use frost and lightning as your offhand is really going to give you an overall solid, balanced build and be able to give you all the answers and options that you need in the middle of combat. Also, just make sure you're using it while they're in the air. Not only long range attacks, but like we just got done talking about tempests or featherfall users, a lot of people like to use the verticality that's offered in Spellbreak, which I don't blame them. That's one of the best things about the game. They like to use that to get some distance between you. So using lightning and frost is such an easy and optimal choice to be able to punish those players. So make sure you're running those. Toxic and Stone is also fun choices, but definitely not optimal, and definitely going to put you guys at a little bit of a disadvantage when you find yourself in situations where you might need that long range or in air option. So let's go ahead and take a look at this video. It does have a few examples of this. I hear an opponent over here. I got into a little bit of a fight with this guy here, and I knew that he was here, so I push in pretty quick with my Firefly. And I know as soon as I see him here that I'm in that pretty close range within 20 meters, and he stops for a second in midair there to kind of lay down his lightning sorcery. So he's an easy target for me at this point. I throw out my fireball, and now I've used my dash to escape from that lightning sorcery like I taught you guys. Use my dash to get some distance, but now I'm not in that sweet spot anymore. But luckily for me, I have the Frost Lance on hand, and I just go ahead and pop it out and secure that exile on that player from far away. And here you guys see kind of the opposite kind of the opposite order of things. But here we hit the frost. We hit this user with the frost lance. Honestly, I was probably close enough to hit a fireball pretty easily here, but he pushed in toward me while I was charging my frost lance. So when I took this shot initially, he wasn't exactly this close. So fireball probably would have been better here, but I am able to use the frost lance. I go ahead and capitalize on that, and then I use my spring step to get up above, and I know that, okay, I'm up above. I'm still not that far away. I can see where he's moving, and this is the optimal position for me to be able to rain down combust and do damage. So I hit the frost shot, use my spring step, and then just use that position to rain down another fireball, and really just shows you how that synergy of frost and fire complements each other in combat and gives you an answer for every bit of the options or problems that you might run into. Let's see. Converting weakness of your main gauntlet with your offhand gauntlet is critical. Exactly. Agreed. Would using tempest as offhand also be good instead of lightning and frost? Tempest is an okay option, but it's not as reliable at longer ranges. And the interaction between flames and tempest wind shears are not ideal. Whereas frost and lightning might kind of counter. I guess how am I trying to say this? The thing about wind shears is if you have a flame wall or something, or fire puddles on the ground, your wind shears are really going to dissipate those very quickly. If you're not running ambidextrous and you have a frost lance, you're not going to have to worry about frost countering your own fire as much. So tempest is not as better as an option. You can try it out and see what what works for you. But in terms of optimal choices for mid to long range, lightning and frost just do a better job of that. So in my opinion, that's why you would pick frost or lightning over tempest. But definitely try it out. See what works for you. Let's see. Afraid using rune fluency as random thought from me, but be afraid to use rune fluency as a means to increase your effectiveness with a long range gauntlet. For example, with Dragonfire versus Tempest, you can use 2 charges of dash or spring step to close the range gap. Exactly. Shout out to Crashy. Crashy is one of our fellow content creators in the community. Going to be casting that Twitch Rivals tournament very soon, you guys. So make sure you check him out. He's hanging out with us in the Spellbreak Discord over in the Spellbreak Academy. So guys, if you're hanging out with us on YouTube and you're not in the Discord, stop what you're doing right now. Go get in the Spellbreak Discord. Come over and hang out because that's where it's going to be and that's where the questions are. So thanks for showing up, Crashy. Thanks for everybody for coming out and joining the Academy today, you guys. Okay, so now we're moving on to the preferred runes with your Pyromancer class. In my opinion, the 2 top runes that you want to try to go for is definitely Spring Step or Dash. Dash will give you that very short cooldown, so will Spring Step. Also, very short bursts of movement that's going to be able to get you repositioned very, very well. And it also chains very, very well into that movement from Firefly, like I told you guys earlier. So that's your Dash right here. Gives you a short little dash, as you can see. We also have Spring Step. I'll show you exactly what it does. And both these runes just really allow you to get in that position where you need to be to make most use of that Pyromancer toolkit. So Spring Step allows you to get that height advantage. For combust range, very, very easy. Dash allows you for more of a freedom choice with your movement. You can go forward, backwards, sideways, down, and all that good stuff. Really good for closing the gap or putting some distance between you and your opponent and repositioning during combat. Also, one of the most important things that you need to know, and this is something that people do not ever do, but this will change your Pyromancer life. You can use your runes in between spells. So I can shoot a fireball. I can shoot a fireball. I can use Spring Step, and then I can shoot a fireball again. So it's not going to reset or prolong your use of your spells. You can use your Spring Step or your Dash in between those. And honestly, a lot of times you'll get where you can shoot a fireball, deal damage, and then instantly reposition to take your opponent off guard and really take them by surprise. So make sure that you're using your rune in between your spells. It's a very effective way to stay aggressive, to keep your damage output optimal, and also to just make use of that rune effectively. That's the reason you have a rune with short cooldowns, so you can do stuff like that. And before we move on to our preferred talents, there is one advanced special technique that I'm going to show you guys right now. We already had a clip of it in the chat. I'm going to show you guys here for your own convenience as well in the Academy. This is called the Firefly Dash Jet. Some people like to call it the Phoenix Dash. But to make it happen, you want to make sure that you have your Firefly unlocked at level 2. You lay down your flame wall like you would normally do. And you want to try to get some high ground. You can do this from jumping off the ground and then falling back down. But it's definitely a better idea to try to drop off of a high ground. You drop down. As soon as you hit the ground, actually I didn't do it. I did it a little bit before I touched the ground. But you drop down. As soon as you touch the ground, you use your dash, and it will carry that momentum of dash and the ground into that Firefly and actually extend it and increase the speed of it. So I missed it again. Maybe I need to push it out a little bit farther. But this is one of the most effective advanced techniques that I know of for the Pyromancer class. It's a great way to be able to close the gap on your opponent. Also, just an insane way to be able to get some distance between you and your opponent. How do I keep messing it up? I do this all the time. Sorry, guys. Sorry. I'll try it again. There we go. So you basically want to dash as soon as you bounce up off the ground to carry the momentum, and you can see that's much, much faster than your regular Firefly, and it takes you almost twice the distance of your regular Firefly. So I don't know why I'm having such a hard time doing this right now. But yeah, basically lay down your firewall, jump down, boom, hit that dash right before you go into it, and it will extend your flight and increase the speed of your flight. So that will be the Firefly Dash Jet, the Phoenix Dash. Make sure you practice it and practice as often as you can. As you can see, it's not always easy to do, but the more you practice it, the more reliable it will be, obviously. All right, now we are moving down to the meat of it, you guys. Preferred talents. I'm sure a lot of you guys are here specifically for the talents. We just had a brand new patch. We have 3 new talents come into the class, into the game, and we're going to tell you guys what we recommend for your talent build to really optimize or to capitalize and get the optimal build for that Pyromancer. So I'm going to show you guys the first 3 new talents that came into the game. We have Vigor, gives you max health plus 25 to start off. We have Foresight, which will see future storms, and Mana Vaults, see enemies on the minimap after every 10 seconds. And we have Ambidextrous, which will gain level 1 skill of your Offhand Gauntlet class, and Offhand spell mana cost -5%. So talents are your main way to kind of facilitate the playstyle that you prefer to play your Pyromancer class. So we've taught you about the spells, we've taught you about the sorceries, we told you about the suggested offhands and the runes. Now that you know all of that and you can use those tools to figure out which way you like to play the best, this is the way that you can kind of pump up that build, that play style, and really just complement that whole way of playing. So make sure that you check out the talents before you go in and come up with your own build. Here are a few builds that we came up with that we think are some of the most optimal choices after the update with Clash. So the first one is going to be a high damaged build. It's going to be a focused mana on your mind talent. It's going to be fervor for your second talent, and we're going to have recovery as that third. If you're in squads, you can easily swap out recovery for thirsty. You'll find a lot more opportunities to make use of thirsty. You can get those potions drunk a lot quicker whenever you're in squads. You'll have a little bit more time to get cover. Focus mana works really, really well with that splash of combust. So having focus mana is kind of just like a passive that's going to give you more damage. Like as you play the game, you're just going to have more damage coming out from that combust, and your fireballs are just going to be that much better at being able to do their thing, All right, so the next one is going to be the ambidextrous build with lightning offhand only. So if you run this build, you want to make sure you find yourself a lightning gauntlet, and that is the only lightning offhand that you want to run with this build. So it's going to be runic fluency as our first talent in the mind section. We're going to be running Finder's Keeper as body, and we're going to be running ambidextrous as our spirit talent. So this allows you to use your potential energy from Conduit, one of the strongest skills in the game, and really just makes your fireballs and your lightning so much stronger. Also giving you the runic fluency is going to give you the option to get the double charges on your runes and be able to be very mobile and just capitalize on the movement and the aggressiveness that you're going to be offered there. And Finder's Keepers is going to let you rush this runic fluency and this ambi talent and get that to level 3 as quickly as possible to try to get the most out of those talents, because those, specifically ambi, is what's giving you the biggest boost in this specific build. So make sure you run runic fluency, Finder's Keeper, ambidextrous, and really try to make a use of that Finder's Keeper to get those scrolls as quickly as possible. We also have a tracking build. That's right, you heard it, a tracking build. This build is really, really good for squads. It allows for your team to be able to focus on one opponent and really just burst them down. And if you want that team focus, tracking is one of those things that can really, really just give you that focus fire that's going to overwhelm your opponent. For your body, in this specific build, we don't really mind what you take. You can kind of take anything that you want as long as you have the talent points to spend on it. It's going to be 2 talent points that you're offered here, so you can use something like Finder's Keeper, Dexterity, or just nothing. You could also use Scavenging or Fortitude, and that's all completely up to you. The most important things for this specific build is Tracking and Thirsty, and you're playing in the squad game mode. So this is a squad mode. So also use your lightning offhand and Combust Splash to consistently apply that tracking to give everybody that good look at the opponent. And that's how that tracking talent that's how that tracking build is going to work very well. Make sure you're using Combust as often as you can, because that's the reason why tracking is so good with Pyromancer. And the last one that we have is, actually not the last one, I'm so sorry. The next one that we have is called the Full Mobility build. This one is for those guys that got to go fast. You got to go fast. And if you want to do this, make sure you're picking Runic Fluency for your Mind talent. Your second talent is going to be Fervor. Just kind of plays right up into that speed. Yet again, going to be allow you to throw out damage with your spells, shoot spells even faster. So Fervor is going to be very good for that mobility and the high output damage. And we got Escapist, which is going to be really the key to the mobility here. It's been buffed since full release, and now you get even more run speed. I think at max talent, I think it's close to the speed you get on an Alacrity Trail, which is very, very, very nice. So Runic Fluency, Fervor, Escapist, full mobility rune, and it really allows you to close the gap or make distance for yourself extremely fast, and will overwhelm opponents when they don't expect you to show up in their face like that. So very, very quick, very, very fun, very, very mobile. So enjoy that. Next we have the Tanky Survivability class. So this is if you want to go in and get that sustain while also dealing some decent damage, but it's more focused on keeping yourself alive. So we got Vigor as your mind. We've got Dexterity as your body, which is going to give you a little bit more jump height and a little bit more mana to use, help you out with that mana management just a bit better. And then we're going back to Recovery. Recovery, one of the strongest talents in the game still, gets that passive healing for you, and it's really going to allow you to just heal up as you fight and not have to stop and heal up and get all that Vigor health back. So make sure that you just play to the synergies of Vigor and Recovery. It's going to be able to passively heal you up for a lot. And Dexterity is one of those talents that just really lends itself very, very well to the Pyromancer class, period. It just, like I said earlier, it gives you more of a jump when you levitate. It gives you less mana cost, which will allow you to cast another fireball, which is mana hungry. So it's just a really, really good choice here. Mostly this class is about, or this build is about Vigor and Recovery, but Dexterity is a great, great addition to that Pyromancer class. And for our last build is going to be for Clash specific. So if some of you guys are playing that new game mode and you're enjoying Clash and you're enjoying that crazy, just dumb fun and chaos of Clash, this build right here will help you out a little bit. And for this build, we're going to be running that Runic Fluency for your mind talent. We're going to be running Scavenging for your secondary body talent. And for the third spirit talent, it is going to be Recovery. So this is going to be really, really strong in Clash. Scavenging and Recovery is almost essential in Clash because you're fighting so often. The synergy between these two are just going to be allowing you to stay aggressive, stay right in the fight, like you don't even care about the nonsense going on around you, and just kill, exile, and get that armor and health back passively as you do it. Very, very nice. We also have that Runic Fluency on board that's just going to really allow you to stay evasive in that nonsense, that chaos, that craziness, and also be effective at putting yourself in positions to really just, lay down some damage and take people out of the game and nab that dub for yourself in that Clash lobby. All right, guys, if anybody has any questions about anything whatsoever that we've talked about throughout the Academy so far, please let me know in the Discord chat right now. I'm going to give you guys a couple of minutes to ask any questions about anything that we've gone over so far. I'll do my best to answer those. And then we have a few VODs to review. So some of you guys, we asked you guys to submit VODs, and we have a few VODs, 4 VODs that we're going to take a look at. We're going to break down, talk about what they did right, talk about what they did wrong, and give you guys a little bit more of an insight into an actual live on the server play. So let's see what we got. Runic Scavenging Recovery is that Clash dominance build. Dude, Runic Scavenging and Recovery is one of those builds in Clash that will very, very much allow you to just go super aggressive and just have a great time with it, man. Questions. Did you take water? I have some water next to me that I'm drinking while we're doing this, and I appreciate your concern. Timmy, what is the strength of the Pyro off drop, mid-game and in-game? So one thing, and that's a very good point, Slim, and an extremely good question. Pyromancer is one of the strongest classes on drop, especially if you land in a favorable position. For Pyromancers, I've been telling you guys the entire class, overhead, high ground position is one of the places that just really, really helps you utilize that combust very, very well. So early game, if you're able to drop on the edge of a wall, if you're able to drop on a cliff beside of a chest or beside of a mana vault, if you're able to land in a way that you have the high ground advantage off the drop, your damage is so powerful. And especially if you have dexterity, it's not going to be as rough for you to get that exile because of mana. But if you don't have dexterity, you will have to get used to managing that mana properly, knowing when you should levitate, knowing when you should just cast a spell. But in early game, it's a very, very powerful class and can win a lot of fights very easily, especially if you position yourself correctly. Throughout the mid game and the late game, I think late game it's not as strong as a class by itself. But if you're running Frost and Lightning offhand, you kind of cover that weaknesses really, really well, and it gives you all the answers that you need. So I would think that, in my opinion, Pyro starts off very, very strong. You can really snowball off of it by getting some early exiles and some good loot. And toward the late game, you kind of have to lean on and rely on your offhand gauntlet a lot more. But as that circle closes in and you do get that close range combat, you're going to be able to rely on the fireballs even more. So, I think it's strong throughout. I think it's pretty strong throughout. Any personal feedback on the Switch gyro? I will give you guys some personal feedback on that type of stuff over on my Twitch channel, which you guys can find me on tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hey, shameless plug. Okay. I think we've got any questions here that's been answered, so we're going to go ahead and move on to the VOD reviews. All right. First VOD review that we're going to be doing for you guys is coming out from the one and only Fire Anakin. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at this for you guys. And I'll make it big so everybody can see it. And here we go. So Fire Anakin is playing the Pyromancer. He wants to know exactly what we're going on here. So pushes up, sees some action going on to the left. Here's a player very close nearby, and tries to be aggressive as possible. Lays down a firefly to be able to use for that mobility. Very, very good here, staying on top of his opponent. The aggressiveness is definitely why he was able to get that kill off. Very, very good. Sees the frost lance come out from afar, and does a good job. He wants to get away. He wants to reposition. But right here, he throws a toxic cloud that is, I see the fireball coming out after. I understand the mentality. He wants to get the DF off. He wants to do some damage. But at this range, it's just so far away and so slow moving that opponent is going to be able to reposition completely and easily in no time. So it's kind of a waste of a cooldown right there. So make sure you're not doing that. Don't throw your clouds too far and expect them to do much. We also have right here where he's healing up on this building after he's gotten this exile here. He wants to get away after getting shot at with the frost lance. He wants to reposition, and he doesn't necessarily need to reposition per se. He can if he wants to, but he doesn't really need to. And to do that, he actually wastes his firewall, his flame wall. So he wastes a 15-second cooldown to reposition to a place that's not very far. He actually cancels his firefly there by running into the ground. So like a huge cooldown that was kind of wasted. And now we see the flight come out, and it kind of didn't need to be used, but it's okay to be used. He got to the high ground, got on top of this mountain here. That's really going to be allowing him to, stay aggressive and stay above his opponent here. Pushes in pretty nicely there. Gets on top of his opponent and rains down some fire. Does get that exile. Make sure that you're staying focused on the terrain around you. Stand on objects or terrain next to your opponent to get those easier hits and have a more difficult time of them hitting you. So you're kind of right out in the open, right out next to your opponent here in the grass. There's not much in the way of high ground or cover whatsoever. You're kind of just running right toward them. It works out for you, but you could have easily, stayed up on the hill or stayed up on some terrain that would have been more favorable for you to get that kill here. Comes in, throws another long range DF. Sometimes those lands, but a lot of times they're just too long range and too slow moving to be a super effective. Pushed really, really well in there with that flight rune. Was super aggressive. Let's see what happens. Let's watch this again. Throws the long range DF, tries to get his opponent on surprise, doesn't do anything with it. Uses the flight to close the gap and comes right into his opponent. Sees the flash freeze come out and is able to dodge it. Could have went on in and stayed close there after the flash freeze was gone, knowing that cooldown was not available. Was really that green light should have given him the green light to go and be aggressive, but he wasn't. He stayed back. He stayed himself safe. In the end, it worked out for him. But honestly, I think that he could have saved himself some time if he would have just stayed close there and capitalized on the aggressiveness that he bought for himself with that flight, and also capitalize on the fact that he dodged the flash freeze. But yeah, other than that, really good play. I like the aggressiveness coming out. Make sure you're not wasting cooldowns when you don't need to. And other than that, really good stuff. Nice job, Fire. Nice job, Fire Anakin. GG's. There we go. All right. Moving on to the next one. Let's see what we got going on. Also, make sure that using your flame wall to engage or explode that DF is a much better option. It's much more instant. So if you're using your fireball to ignite it, sometimes you will miss it because your fireball doesn't get there in time. The cloud might hit, but the fireball won't get there to ignite in time. So flame wall is definitely the better option for sure. All right, here we got QLQ Salta coming through, showing us some of those pyro skills. Let's see what we got going on. All right, we see him levitate, going up, using all of his mana there. You don't want to really use all your mana if you don't have to. And now he has an opponent coming in from behind. Uses that flash freeze, lays down that firewall pretty well there. I think he lays down the firewall and does some damage. Didn't lay it directly on his opponent. He might not have anticipated him to go up, but he does lay the firewall down as he sees his opponent push in. It looks like, in my opinion, he's really not being aggressive at all. He has everything in his toolkit here that he needs to be able to be aggressive, And just because his opponent pushed in and got the first initial engage, I feel like he kind of felt like he was pressured the entire time, and he wasn't really able to be aggressive. And like I said earlier, somebody was asking when you should know when to heal and when to not heal. In most situations, in my experiences, Pyromancer is really rewarded for being aggressive. Even if you're a little bit low, being aggressive and capitalizing on that up close big burst AoE damage that is offered is really the right choice most of the time. So you see that he's kind of running a lot. He does try to move. He does try to be evasive here. He uses both those rune charges pretty well, but unfortunately during the time of using those rune charges, he's not able to track his opponent. He's being evasive, and Spellbreak is about being evasive and using that mobility to your advantage. But if you can't do it while staying tracked and locked onto your opponent, then you're just putting yourself at a disadvantage, and you're just not going to be able to use anything from it. Also, there was a fireball there that collided with an enemy, and you got dealt 100 damage due to both splash. It happens, and it's something that is not very easy for you to anticipate. But you just got to kind of be aware that it's a thing that can happen, and try to minimize it as much as possible by being aware that close range stuff like that can happen. So you see Salta take a lot of damage here. If you watch this engage right here, he loses half of his armor and half of his health there. 100 damage coming out from that fireball collision. So just be aware, be more aggressive, and make sure that you can track while being evasive at the same time. So because being evasive and being highly mobile is just not going to be effective if you can't do anything with it. So good job, Salta. Thanks for sending that in. I appreciate the VOD. That was awesome. And now we're moving on to our third VOD coming out from Twitch, NomZZZ, or Noms. Nom 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 nom. All right, let me get it popped up for you guys. All right, let's see what we got going on here. Okay. All right, so jumps on over, finds himself face to face with an opponent. Looks like he does do a pretty nice DF there. Let's see, did he engage? How did he engage that? He ignited that with a fireball. It would have been quicker to do with the flame wall, and it also probably would have given him that ignite damage that he would have liked to see, and he probably would have been able to actually get more damage because of it. He does get a little bit of damage, so I do give him props for making that DF work, and also for being above his opponent. He does drop down there. He does manage to get back around and get back to the high ground there, so that's a really good call. That also, you got to make very sure that whenever there's fire on the ground, you don't need to shoot another fireball to explode the cloud. So if there's fireball, or if there's already a fire puddle on the ground, or if there's already like a flame wall nearby, you don't have to expend another fireball. You don't have to use that mana to try to ignite that toxic cloud. It's going to automatically ignite whenever it hits. So you can use that time and use those resources to aim a fireball at your opponent directly, instead of sending a fireball out to ignite that, to explode that toxic cloud. So make sure you're very, very aware here that you have fireballs, and you have firewalls and fireballs and fire puddles already there. There you go. Just like that. All right. Pushing around, looking good. Looks like he is using the high ground pretty well, and also using his rune to reposition effectively and stay on top of the high ground a lot, and change his position quite a bit. Throw some pretty long range fireballs there. Not really idea. I definitely wish that you had the lightning or the frost in your offhand to be able to deal with that situation there. You did heal right out in the open as well, which is not ideal. You could have been punished pretty hard there, but it looks like you got pretty lucky. Throws a fireball out. Again, pretty long range on that fireball. Was able to land it because you were up above your opponent. So showing how important that height advantage really is, even for a long range fireball fights. And we see him landing a beautiful one there to the face of Berna. Some good plays, some good aiming coming out from Twitch Noms. Gotta say, I'm impressed with your aiming. Even at long range, you was able to make it work. But definitely see a lot of situations here where you would have benefited from, having that lightning or that frost on your offhand, and also sometimes where you could have saved some mana or taken more advantage of your DF explosion by igniting it with your flame wall instead of your fireball. But other than that, some really, really good play. I like how you used your rune. I really liked how you kept your position. Your movement was really, really well done. And I think you did a great job. Just tighten up the screws just a little bit, and you'll be winning dubs every day, all day in no time. I like it. Twitch noms. Good job. All right. And our fourth VOD review, I believe, might be our final VOD review, and it's coming out from Wooks. I recognize that name. What's up, Wooks? It's good to see you come through with a VOD for us to review. And shout out to Wooks. Always comes through and supports over on Twitch. So thank you, man. Thank you. Let's see what we got. Here we go. Wooks. All right, using that TP rune, definitely not the most optimal rune, but he is able to use it to close the gap and be aggressive, so I like the aggressiveness coming out. Very up in the face of his opponent, using the shockwave to deal most of the damage here, and does eventually use that combust with a little bit of that backboard there provided by the heal. But you don't really see Wooks using the terrain around him very much. He's kind of just running right up on his opponent, right out there in the open field. And nothing to use to keep himself safe and not vulnerable to shockwaves or anything like that. He's also in close enough range that Toxic could really do some damage. So I would have loved to see you have a rune that can better help you get that vertical movement to maybe get you to the high ground when you need to. And I haven't seen that happen yet. But we'll see what's going on. Closes the gap here, still not using the terrain very well. Is using that combust pretty well, which you see a lot of Pyromancers use right off the bat to rain down and get that splash damage pretty easily. Uses the TP again to push on in. The TP does allow for some aggressiveness and some very surprise aggressiveness, but it does not offer the vertical movement that you see with other options. And here you'll see, right there is just a prime example of why having something like lightning or having something like frost in your offhand to lean on whenever an opponent is out of your range is really, really the optimal choice. We do see that nice firewall laid down here. He laid the firewall down, tried to get this opponent that was out of the line of sight. A really, really good job of doing that. Unfortunately, he was not able to get it to tick. But he did put the pressure on his opponent and really gave him no other way to go. So his opponent had to go this way, had to push in toward Wooks, which is good. But as you see him flying here, he's just right out in the open. He's so vulnerable to damage, but Wooks can just not do anything about it. He can't capitalize on it because he's shooting fireballs at an unfavorable range into the air. So having something like lightning or ice is definitely one of those things that you want to have. It's going to make your class and Pyromancer be able to actually compete even at higher level of skills. The other thing is that with stone, you kind of want to make sure that you're not up in your enemy's face. I've noticed a lot of the fights here where you have stone and fire, and you're within that sweet spot range of your fire, and you could be dealing fireball range really, really easily. But instead you're using your shockwave. Most of them are hitting, and it is working for you. But I think in a competitive setting or in a lobby that has more experienced players, that definitely want to be able to use that fireball at that sweet spot range when you can, and also use the shockwave around that 20-meter range, a little bit farther is pretty good. So that you're not right in the face of your opponent, because it's just not a good look. It's not where you want to be at all. And that is going to be the final VOD for review, you guys. I just want to say thank you so much, every single person, for being here. It has been a very exciting and hopefully educational class for you guys. Spellbreak is my favorite game and has been my favorite game for a couple of years. So hopefully you guys are enjoying it as much as I am. Hopefully all these little tools and tips I gave you will help you go into the HoloLens and be the #1 Pyro battle mage that you can be. And in fact, I encourage you guys to do that right now. We're about to end this first Pyromancer class. Thanks so much again for being here with me. But go use the Element Discord, the Spellbreak Discord. Hop into those voice channels. Find yourself some teammates. Go out there and have a great time using what we taught you guys here. And I appreciate you all so much. Thanks for being here. And I'm going to check the chat one more time to make sure there's no questions that I missed. But yeah, you guys, it's always fun to play together, and it's more fun to play with friends. So make sure you play with everybody. Circling opponents in one direction limits the flight effectiveness. All right, you guys, that's going to be it for me before I go. We do have a link in the Spellbreak Academy class chat in the Discord provided by Proletariat Andy, where you guys can click on that link. You can go give us feedback on the Academy. Let us know ways that we could have done better. Let us know ways that we did great. And we just want to make sure that we bring all you guys into the HoloLands prepared for your battle. And we appreciate it, any kind of time that you can spend on that. Other than that, have a wonderful, amazing, incredible day, because you are wonderful, incredible, and amazing. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.